Ari and James, Monday through Friday, 8 a to 11 a Eastern Time. Your home for all things Big 12.
And away we go on a wild and wacky Wednesday, because that is what today is, along with James Wessling, whose phone looks about as big as him as we open up the show today. I am Ari Temkin. James is joining us from an undisclosed location in the greater state of Kansas. I am Ari Temkin, joining us from our undisclosed location at our Dallas studios. And we've got a lot to get to today. Thank you, James. Good to see you. How are you? I'm actually watching you on the monitor, so it's slightly delayed. So if you need my attention, just make sure to know that it'll be 10 to 15 seconds after I see it. Happiness is a choice. Thank you for choosing us. This is Big 12 Today on Big 12 Radio, presented by Modelo. We've got the Big 12 Women's Championship starting today in Kansas City. We'll break that down for you and tell you the implications of that. There was a wild and wacky night last night in Big 12 hoops. Many an upset, crazy games, unbelievable finishes, and of course our spring caravan continues, because the offseason never sleeps. There is no off in offseason. There's only research. James, how are you?
Man, I'm fantastic. What in the world happened last night in the Big 12? Like, if you just woke up this morning and looked at the scoreboard, you would think that the Big 12 was hammered drunk. and
what did you do last night, Big 12? You slept with your clothes on?
You know, I think
your shoes and socks in the bed?
I was stunned that Kansas State won last night. That might be the fifth least surprising outcome from the games that were played last night.
Yeah.
When you look at what happened big picture in this conference, I cannot wrap my mind around it. I can't figure out if these teams that lost last night are slumping, or they know they're in the tournament, and so they've just kind of thrown in the towel for the end of the regular season and trying to get rested up, or if these teams that won last night are actually surging and going to be a major problem in the Big 12 tournament. It was just total chaos last night in the Big 12.
Tell us what it means. I think you're right. Like, searching for meaning last night. Some bubble teams in the Big 12 had some big-time wins last night. Some bubble teams in the Big 12 had some devastating losses. And then there's Arizona State. And
what?
And one of the stats, if you remember this, James, I want to say that teams after playing Arizona, we talked about this, are 4-12. And amazingly, Arizona State's 5 of their 7 conference wins have come against teams coming off of that Arizona game. Now, Kansas lost 2 straight in the state of Arizona, both to Arizona and Arizona State, but we'll dig into that later on here in this first hour, in the next segment, actually. But yeah, it's a wild and wacky Wednesday because it was a crazy night last night in the Big 12. You're right. You're perfectly well stated, James. It was drunk. The Big 12 basketball woke up this morning and it was like, what'd you do last night? Where'd you go? Who are you with? Why are you sleeping with your clothes and your shoes on?
You know, and the good news for the Big 12 is the Big 12 is still safe, and the Big 12 is still going to be just fine when we talk about these teams at the top. I think the Big 12 is in a position with what Cincinnati did to BYU, not just beating them last night, but just completely dismantling them, 90-68. I don't see how, if the NCAA selection committee is doing their job and watching these teams, Cincinnati is a tournament team. TCU is completely off the bubble after their win over Texas Tech. But then the Kansas-Arizona State game, over the last 10 seasons, I'm sure you saw this, Kansas just pounded Arizona State on the rebounding. KU had 55 rebounds to Arizona State's 43. So they had 55 rebounds, and they were plus 12 on the glass. Over the last 10 seasons, Division I teams that hit those numbers are 440-1. Kansas became just the second team to lose a game, despite just dominating the opponent with those type of numbers on the boards. Bill Self gets tossed. Like Oklahoma State goes on the road and beats UCF in Orlando. Oklahoma State's not supposed to beat UCF in Orlando.
Yeah.
Like it was completely nuts.
Absolute madness. The madness gets started at 11 a.m. Central in Kansas City today with 4 first-round matchups, and there are very much tournament implications in these games. I mean, when you look at Colorado, Utah, Arizona State, BYU, and Kansas, all of them looking to win their way into the tournament. I think Colorado is safe, but they had won 5 straight and 8 of 9 before losing 2 straight against BYU and Utah to close out the regular season. So you got to think Colorado needs a little bit of help here in the women's championship. But James, what'd you think of the court? The ASB glass floor officially made its debut. At least the unveiling of it. We'll see when games are actually played later on today. But what'd you think of the ASB glass floor in Kansas City?
Oh, dude, it's sweet. I mean, it looks amazing. Powered by Windex, as we alluded to yesterday. So I'm looking at the NCAA tournament on the women's side. So the bracketology that Charlie Crean puts together for ESPN, and right now has 7 teams from the Big 12 in the field with some of the teams you noted right on the bubble, right? So Colorado is part of the last 4 in. Utah is part of the first 4 out. And then the next 4 out, and I'm a little surprised to see this team here, Arizona State.
Yeah.
They do not have Arizona State in the field. They have them part of the next 4 out with BYU and Kansas. So you've got 4 teams part of either the first or the next 4 out on the women's side that really, frankly, need to make some noise up in KC.
So basically 7 teams in with the possibility of 11, but it won't be 11 because some of those teams are going to beat each other potentially in this tournament that might knock them out. But, I mean, you've got the K-State Cincinnati game to start things off, and then Utah and Houston and BYU. BYU needs a win there, and then they get Utah. Arizona State is maybe the biggest game of the day today with the rivalry game and Arizona State needing a win before they would get Iowa State, and then Kansas and UCF. Kansas needs a win, and then probably at least, I would think, 3 wins Kansas would as the 11 seed in the women's championship in order to feel good about itself. They would need to beat UCF, Colorado, and then Baylor. And I wonder what Arizona State would need. They'd certainly need a win over Arizona and Iowa State and maybe a win over West Virginia. I'm thinking these bubble teams. I mean, Kansas definitely needs to get to the semis. I would think the same is true for Arizona State, where Colorado probably just needs the 1 win over Kansas in order to solidify itself. But you said they're what? They're in right now, Colorado is?
Yeah, Colorado's projected as part of the last 4 in the field. So if Colorado beats Kansas, even if they lose to Baylor in that next round, I would think Colorado is still safe. I'm a little surprised to see only 7 teams in. When you look at the Big 12 and where we rank in terms of the net, where we rank in terms of – I understand that the Big 12 doesn't have a top 5 team in the nation, but if you take that really small pool of elite dominant programs at the very top of women's basketball and just set them aside – the Big 12 outside of that is the best conference in America, the deepest conference, certainly. So I'm a little surprised that there's only 7. And go ahead.
Well, the stat is 75% of the Big 12 teams are top 60 in the net. So I think your point's extremely well stated about the depth of this league, and I cannot remember Big 12 tournament games in the first round that had NCAA tournament implications, meaning when was the last time we saw 10 or 11 seeds that needed to be, that were firmly on the bubble that needed to win their way in? Normally first round matchups in the Big 12 tournament are just teams that are playing out a string of, the rest of the season. But to have basically 2 teams that are going to be playing today with major tournament implications, 3 teams, BYU, Kansas, and Arizona State, 3 of the teams, 9, 10, 11 seeds, all in the Big 12 playing for the potential to be in the tournament.
Dude, and that's just why I love conference tournament week so much. And Big 12, mid-major conference tournaments, like I love it all. all, because I do think that a lot of times these bubble conversations, when they get in that room, when you've got bubble teams playing each other head-to-head, like a Kansas or a Colorado potentially, like a BYU and a Utah potentially on Thursday, a Cincinnati and Kansas State, the winner of that one gets Texas Tech, and then you look at Arizona State and Iowa State. I think Iowa State's obviously probably in, but Arizona State, that would be massive for them. Like I do think these games have a major impact on how the committee looks at how you're playing heading into potentially the NCAA tournament and whether you get in or you get left out.
Yeah, no, well said. I think, to that point, Cincinnati has a pretty good case here to be a team. Now, we know, as we talked about yesterday, they're probably going to need to close out with a win over TCU, and with TCU's win, they're probably already in. So that game more important to Cincinnati than TCU, but certainly matters for TCU from a seeding perspective. All right, we have a busy, wacky, and wild Wednesday here. We are brought to you by Modelo, the full-time fan, because we're, of course, talking basketballs. The men's and women's basketball seasons are heating up here. The women's basketball tournament getting underway in Kansas City in a few hours, with the men's to start a week from today. We've also got our spring caravan making a stop today in Provo, Utah. Lance Leipold joins us for his spring preview interview coming up in about 30 minutes from now. So we've got a crazy day today and a lot to get to. Also, congratulations to Krista Gerlich, named the 2025-2026 Big 12 Women's Basketball Coach of the Year for Texas Tech. Not much was expected. Texas Tech was the last unbeaten in the Big 12 and has ended up as the 5 seed, which is where we go next. Who will be the 5 seed of the men's side? Who's going to have to miss that double bye? And what does last night's game mean for that? Usually we do this on a Monday, but there was so much going on in last night's game. Let's put a minute on the clock and react to all of the hoops last night on the men's side. Along with James Wesley, I'm Ari Tepkin. This is Big 12 Today on Big 12 Radio, presented by Modelo. Heard on TuneIn, watched on Big 12 Studios.
And he hammers it through. Abby on a bounce and turns it over. Was trying to find Sanders across the lane. Here's Josiah Sanders wrapping it in for Colorado in transition. A 7-0 Colorado run. Corner pop. That's good. Dawes putback crawls off the front rim. Dawes saves it in bounds, but it's recovered by McKaylee. The Buffaloes with numbers, and McKaylee throws it down in transition.
3 turnovers, which is unbelievable to me.
That's always been a staple under Tad Boyle. Johnson the takeaway here and lays it in.
Move that I think I haven't seen all year, but he is just a natural scorer. And if you let Bangot, no, I know you and I have worked together before, so I know you would know me.
All right, this is out of a timeout, and Terrence Brown sticks the turnaround jump shot. He's doing everything in his power. Malone's perfect 3 for 3 from the field tonight. 6 points off the bench as Sanders turns and bounces it through.
As I say, a very creative type step-through move.
Holland going baseline. Dak puts it back. The stick back for Bangot Dak. And he's in Colorado. They shoot 60% tonight in Salt Lake City. And the Buffaloes lead wire to wire in a 92-78 win over Utah. Just their second true road win
Big 12 Radio on TuneIn and Big 12 Studios. We are presented by Modelo. Our Modelo Spring Caravan runs through Provo, Utah today. We'll do that in the final hour of the show. But coming up in about 20 minutes from now, we'll talk with Lance Leipold as part of our Spring Caravan, James Westling, Ari Temkin. It's Big 12 today on Big 12 Radio. Holy Big 12. Last night was absolutely wild in the Big 12. Major implications. Bubbles everywhere. Let's, as we do on Mondays, put them in on the clock and react to all of the Big 12 hoops action from last night. T-Chains, Damon Turner, take us through these games.
All right, first one, guys, Colorado at Utah.
All right, well, not much in terms of implications here, but Colorado scores 92 points on Utah. Colorado, 7-10 now in Big 12 play, very quietly, getting closer and closer to 500. Meanwhile, Utah, 2-15, just kind of a forgettable first year for Alex Jensen and the Utah Utes in this regional rivalry game between Colorado and Utah.
Ari, stop me if you've heard me say this before. Colorado is a year away.
Yeah.
Colorado is going to be an NCAA tournament team next season. Mark my words. So much growth from last year to this year when they were the worst team in the league. And it will be year 3 under Tad Boyle for all of these guys that are eventually going to be NBA players like Bengot Dak, like Sebastian Ronchik. Dak, by the way, had 22 points, a career high, 10 rebounds. He's a 7-foot wing type player. He makes his free throws. He was 9 for 10 from the line. Like, Colorado's got a really good freshman in Johnson at the point. Watch out for the Buffs next year.
All right, next one, guys. Oklahoma State at UCF.
Yeah, this is a bad loss for UCF in overtime, but Oklahoma State, a desperate team. Anthony Roy went for 27. Kanye Cleary scored 7 of his 23 in overtime. Roy had the 27, and then Cleary had a three-pointer and shot 4 of 4 from the line in overtime. And that was a key here. Themis Folks scored a team-high 20. Kugel had 18 with 11 in the first half. And, yeah, I mean, UCF looked really good at the start, and then Oklahoma State came roaring back. 10 lead changes in this one.
Dude, this game was nuts. This game featured the most points ever in a Big 12 game involving Oklahoma State.
Wow.
And just 4 points shy of the all-time Big 12 record, which belongs to Kansas, Oklahoma, Buddy Hield, that epic showdown. 111 to 104, and give Oklahoma State a ton of credit. Again, a team that's not going to be in the NCAA tournament, but if they're in the NIT or that tournament out in Vegas, watch out for them. And, dude, UCF, like, this is a home loss that's a, quad 2 loss? This probably knocks you a line or two in the NCAA tournament seeding.
Yeah, well said.
All right, next one, guys. West Virginia at Kansas State.
Yeah, this was a shocker. West Virginia needing a win here against K-State to stay alive in the race for an NCAA tournament bid, and they lose 65-63 at K-State. We know road wins are tough, but K-State shot 41% for the field. West Virginia shot 39%. Teams combined for 29 turnovers. The decisive factor was the free throw line. K-State made 19 of 25, 76%, while West Virginia went 9 of 16 for 56%. So K-State was plus 10 from the foul line on West Virginia. In a 2-point game, that's huge.
Well, and Ari, should we address the elephant in the room, which is that P.J. Haggerty didn't play for Kansas State in this game. Their leading scorer at 23 points per did not play, and Kansas State beats a team that's on the NCAA tournament bubble. He was scratched about 90 minutes before tip-off. Kansas State released a statement saying that he suffered an injury in practice, and they still won. Kamari McGriff had a season-high 18. Nate Johnson looked like a completely different player. That's the big headline for me, is that Haggerty out, K-State wins.
Next one, BYU at Cincinnati.
Wow. Yeah, this was a big-time win for Cincinnati, and, man, things are going very south for BYU. But the turnover battle was huge here. The Bearcats turned BYU's 15 turnovers into a 21-4 advantage in points off turnovers, and they only committed 7. Jalen Celestine, 18 points, 7 of 9, and 4 of 6 from 3. Also had 2 blocks. Jizzle James had 18. Rob Wright, by the way, 21 points, but 0 assists in 32 minutes. This game was basically over by halftime. Cincinnati built its lead through that ball pressure that destroyed BYU in this one with the 21 points off turnovers. They converted turnovers into transition offense at will. And Cincinnati's a team that struggled most of the year on offense. Easy way to take care of that is to turn teams over and get out in transition. That's what they did.
Dude, I'm so happy for Wes Miller. Cincinnati's won 6 of their last 7, and they did it last night on national TV in front of a sellout crowd at Fifth Third Arena, over 12,000. They've always been elite defensively, but now the offense is coming around, and Jalen Celestine's the big story there. He had 18. He's been on an absolute heater. I would not want to play this team in the Big 12 tournament. I wouldn't want to play them in the NCAA tournament. I'm going to continue to beat that drum that they should be a tournament team. And if they get in and they're in one of those play-in games, watch out for Cincy to make a run.
Yeah, their third quad one win, and we said they probably needed to close out with 2 victories. They get one of the 2 so far, so we'll see. BYU, meanwhile, has lost 3 straight and 9 of their last 13 games. Could this slide BYU to a double-digit seed? We shall see.
Yes. And also, when are we going to start, looking at not just these wins for Cincinnati, but how they're winning.
Yeah.
They went into Allen Fieldhouse and beat KU by almost 20, and then they just destroy BYU. Like, come on.
All right, guys, next one at TCU at Texas Tech.
Well, this is a big-time win for TCU, and, I mean, to do it on the road in Lubbock, I mean, Texas Tech's been the team that's been the road warriors. This was as impressive of a win as you can get. Texas Tech was surging. Three straight wins. TCU is legit. I think this obviously solidifies their spot as an NCAA tournament team. They've now won 7 of their last 8 games. You mentioned yesterday how important Lella Vicious has been to them. He had a 3 with 2:06 remaining to stretch the lead to 9 for TCU, and it looked like Texas Tech might get back into it. Anytime Texas Tech threatened, TCU made a run to get back up. And TCU won the rebounding edge, 39-25. Including a 16-7 margin on the offensive rebounds. And they also won the battle for second chance points with 22. They turned 16 offensive rebounds into 22 points, which was huge here against a team that usually owns the glass.
And Texas Tech was surging. That's what is so bonkers about last night. Like Xavier Edmonds, again, I touched on him yesterday. He was a JUCO kid. It took him a while to get familiar with this level of physicality, how the games are officiated. His 20 points and 12 rebounds was the difference. He's also making his free throws now. That's something he struggled with earlier in the year. TCU, another one of those teams. Like TCU and Cincinnati, to me, are the 2 teams outside of that upper echelon that could really help this conference, with one of them making a deep run in the NCAA tournament and winning a game or 2 or maybe even 3. I love the way TCU's playing right now, too.
Final one, gentlemen. Kansas at Arizona State.
Ooh. There's a quote from Kelvin Sampson after the Kansas-Houston game, and Sampson said, "Kansas is just one of those teams that you just never know." This game is the perfect explanation for that quote. Kansas could not score. In fact, they only had 20 first-half points, their lowest half output of the season. They were down 20 at halftime, 40-20. Bill Self got tossed in this game in the first half. Kansas in the first half had 3 technical fouls from their bench. In the second half, Elmarco Jackson was whistled for a flagrant 1. This game didn't end until about 11 o'clock at night, despite starting at 8:15. Kansas, 2 stats in this game that are just insane. Kansas is now 0-4 all-time, 0-5 all-time at Arizona State. And this is just the second time in his illustrious career that Bill Self's been ejected from a game, James.
Which, that was shocking to me, to hear that it was only his second all-time, all the games he's been on the sidelines. And Bill Self is a guy that's very animated and in the ear of officials. Darren Peterson going 3 for 18, that's a major red flag to me. You know, he's kind of slumping down the stretch when it comes to his percentages and what he was shooting when he was on the floor earlier this season. I wonder if the wear and tear of the season, even though he hasn't played a ton of minutes, like it can be draining on these guys mentally, physically, and now maybe that he's on the floor, his body's not used to being on the court as much as it was, and that's been an issue. Mo Odom was a dude. And then Masamba Diop with 19. And give Bobby Hurley a ton of credit. This was probably his final home game. A nice crowd last night. And I think Arizona State benefits from these teams making that 2-game Arizona road swing. Like, you go play at Arizona, you got to turn around and play at Arizona State. It happened to Texas Tech, and now it happened to KU.
Yeah, also, just to the weirdest game. Kansas had 55 rebounds, including 23 offensive rebounds, but only had 6 second chance points off of those 23 offensive rebounds. It's the weirdest thing. Like, they could not rebound the ball on the defensive end as well as they could on the offensive end. They just could not put the ball in the hole. I mean, it was like there was, something on the top of the rim that kept the ball from going in. It was insane. Kansas also committed 17 turnovers. This was an oddly officiated game. I thought Doug Sermons was a bit over-aggressive at times, especially when it comes to teeing up and ejecting Bill Self. But, officials never lose you games, but it was just an oddly officiated game. Kansas also had a 17-1 run in this game, trimming a 20-point halftime deficit to 4. It's just the weirdest game. One of the weirdest games you'll ever watch. I left it thinking, immediately like, okay, that was a weird loss. Like, I should feel worse. But I also at times liked how they played with Peterson, despite Peterson shooting 3 of 18. And then here is a very telling statistic. Kansas is now 1-5 in games when Darren Peterson attempts 17 or more shots.
I mean, that's too many shots. And if you look at the games where he goes for 20, 25 in 20 or 25 minutes, he's usually doing it by getting to the foul line, making a couple of threes. He's doing it on less shots. Bryson Tiller just completely disappeared last night. 3 points and 5 rebounds. I thought Masamba Diop really bothered him with his length and athleticism.
Yes, Diop was great in this game, by the way.
That guy, number one, I think he would be a first-round NBA draft pick. I don't see how scouts wouldn't just be absolutely enamored by his length and athleticism. I mean, he runs like a guard. He is a freak athlete. If Bobby Hurley's not back in Tempe next season, somebody's going to get an absolute steal in the portal in Diop for next season because I think he's that good. And I've seen him in person, and just the way he moves, his footwork, he makes his free throws as a big guy. Like, he is going to be a star at the next level.
Yeah.
And he hasn't been playing the game that long either. He was a very much overlooked 3-star recruit that Bobby Hurley nabbed when he was over in Africa at the NBA Africa Academy. But yeah, I tuned into this game when it was 40-20, and I'm like, okay, where's the run? Like, Kansas is going to go on a run. And then they did, to your point. They get it within a couple of possessions, but they just couldn't get over the hump, and Arizona State responded.
Yeah, this is also a damning statistic for Bill Self in Kansas. Kansas is now 7-12 in the month of March since 2013. Sorry, since 2023. Which is hard to believe, quite frankly. Here's what Bill Self said following this loss to Arizona State about getting ejected.
Well, I argued, Darren's foul, and I think he gets help all the time, but I argued that, and then the first one, that's fine. I mean, I was out of the box. Second one, I was still out of the box, so I guess that's the reason why he gave it to me, because Sermons gave it to me because I was still out of the box and didn't retreat in a timely manner in which he wanted me to. But yeah, that was it. I certainly was not intentional whatsoever.
Yeah, I mean, James, 7-12 in the month of March last 2 seasons.
Yeah, I mean, that's not going to cut it. And this Kansas season has been particularly unique in that this team was playing like a top 5 team in the country at one point in time. And Bill Self's teams traditionally get better as the season progresses. Now, the last couple of seasons, they just didn't have the offensive firepower. This team has the offensive firepower, so I can't figure it out. And I thought, I went back and watched part of our show from yesterday, and that clip we played from Grant McCaslin, when he was talking about this time of year, some teams are just ready for the season to be over because they're exhausted. It is a long season.
Yep.
And you're in practice, and you're in film session, and you're managing classes each and every day. And, we all played youth sports. I played basketball in high school. There were several years by this time of the year, I'm like, dude, I'm just ready for the season to be over. So these teams that aren't battling for an NCAA championship run are, I think there are some players on some teams that I watch and I'm like, oh, that dude's just ready for the season to be over. Yeah. And I think that's why, big picture, we had all these just incredibly wild scores last night in the Big 12 is some teams still want to be playing and other teams don't.
Yeah, no, well said. I completely agree, and it's obvious and evident when you get to this final week or 2 weeks The one thing I will say about this Kansas game is, I know that there are a lot of Kansas fans that are disenchanted by this, but I don't know. I liked the way at times that Kansas played within, especially the second half. First half, they were completely lifeless, and that was awful. To claw back in the second half and play the way that they did, I thought was impressive. And Darren Peterson was driving, he was dishing. He had 10 rebounds, 4 assists, and 5 steals in the game. So while he wasn't hitting shots, he was a much bigger part of the offensive ecosystem in a way that we haven't seen. They just could not knock down shots. It was unbelievable. Peterson had a few and ones that he couldn't finish, so they became 2 free throws, and there were just other things like that. But I thought overall, 10 rebounds, 5 steals, those are not bad numbers for Darren Peterson. All right, more on these games, including what I thought was the biggest win of yesterday's games, which was TCU over Texas Tech, or maybe it was Cincinnati. We'll get into those games coming up. On the way next, though, our spring caravan, we're talking Kansas football with Lance Leipold, the head football coach of KU. Lance Leipold joins us next with James Wesley, Amari Temkin. This is Big 12 Today, presented by Modelo. Heard on TuneIn, watched on Big 12 Studios.
$87-76 in Stillwater back on January 6th. Should be a good game. Both of these teams want to get up and down. And when they played Cincinnati over the weekend, they looked lost without him. Lost 91-68. There's Bull with the offensive rebound and the putback.
23 points for UCF in the first 8 minutes is just an incredible pace. Good shot.
Coleman ends a long field goal drought for Oklahoma State with that 3. Nice finish. That was Jalen Curry, the 6'1 junior lefty with long strides on his way to the rim. But the Cowboys are right in it on the road. Roy, a little hesitation. Counted in the foul.
Ahmed's calling for that ball. He wanted it. He got it.
His shot blocked by Bull. Ahmed stays with it, and Roy is there to follow up the miss. The pass comes in. Roy rejected by Bull, and we're going to overtime. Vukovic off the screen.
Oh, what a finish. My gosh.
Andrea Vukovic gets the first bucket in overtime for Oklahoma State.
Well, you don't need to shoot it if you're Oklahoma State, but you can if you want to.
Christian Coleman with one final bucket as we're under 10 seconds to go.
And that's why they're going to walk out of here as spoilers of the UCF senior night.
Trailing 23-10, Oklahoma State.
Radio. This is Big 12 Today. We are heard on TuneIn, watched on Big 12 Studios. And as our spring caravan continues, because there is no football off-season, there's no off and off-season, there's just research. Let's welcome in Lance Leipold, the head football coach from the University of Kansas. Coach, how are you? Good to see you.
Good morning, guys. Great to be with you. We're doing well.
When do you guys start spring football?
Well, as we kind of continue to go through the winter conditioning, we have one more week of that. Spring break follows, and then the 26th is when we'll put the pads on.
All right, so, there's a lot of interesting aspects of your team when you look at players you retain, the portal, but maybe most interesting is the quarterback position. This has been a position that's been fairly solidified for you, really, since your time there, despite, some injuries to Jalen. But you go into a season, into spring, thinking Jalen was going to be your starter. So how different is that for you, and what are you looking for out of the quarterbacks this spring?
Well, it has been different. Jalen was so impactful to this program, to this university, and helping us change how we were viewed, our success on the field, a lot of different things, as you're well aware. But we feel we have a room of guys that can compete. We have two guys in Isaiah Marshall, Cole Ballard, that have had a little bit of playing time here and there. Cole Ballard had a start in his true freshman season that can help us win football games, and that's what's important. They both have great leadership qualities. We think they have a playing style that fits what we want to do, and a way to get people rallied around them. You mentioned time that Jalen had missed, whether it be Jalen didn't go through spring ball last year, was very limited the year before. So these guys have had the opportunities to lead our football team in the behind-the-scenes way for multiple years now, and now we're going to see which one can win this job and go. And and as we talked about the portal and everything, everyone sometimes feels, I say everyone, people many times will feel that your answers are outside of your building. Okay, and that getting someone else that may not have worked out at another school can rectify and answer your things. And in today's world of what we have, the cost that it takes to acquire those type of people, we are 100% on board that these are the guys that we can win with, and we can surround them with players that can help.
Lance, I'm really intrigued by Chase Jenkins, the transfer from Rice, because he was running Scott Abel's really unique dynamic spread, triple option, and he hasn't been playing quarterback for very long. He was a converted receiver, and because he's in that offense, I think he was a hidden gem is what I'm trying to say that you guys found in the portal. He didn't have maybe the stats that some of the other guys had, but I saw him in person a couple times last year, and I like what he brings to the table. What do you like?
Well, I appreciate you saying that, especially I'd seen him live. Again, David McComb, our third quarterback guy, again, in trying to get everybody reps, and in today's world of how things work, retaining all three is very difficult. And wish David the best, and he's going to be very successful at Miami of Ohio. But we needed to add another experienced quarterback to the room. We felt as we evaluated, all across the country, everything that kind of fits the slots is what we're talking about. To have someone with his type of speed and athleticism, throwing accuracy and some other things are still need to be developed, but confident Jim Zabrowski, Andy Koldnicki will put together something that, again, the dynamics of the athleticism of that position that can create extra first downs and keep drives alive with their feet is something that we strive for, and we feel that he'll be a guy that, again, has the chance to be in the thick of it.
James Franklin, being let go from Penn State had major implications for the Big 12, certainly negatively from Iowa State, getting Matt Campbell to go to Penn State and a bunch of his players. But one of the positives for the Big 12 was Andy Kotelnicki returning to Kansas and to your staff. Andy has been so electric as an offensive coordinator. You've had a couple of years without him. What's it like to have Andy back now?
It's been great to have Andy back in the building. Andy and I have stayed in touch through the time. Obviously disappointed when he left, but happy for him and his career path and what it was. But
right.
as things progressed through the fall, we started to talk. We talked more after the season as he explored many different options, and he had a ton. that including some head coaching opportunities that return to Kansas would fit. Again, his creativity, not just offensively, but in ways that when he stepped back in this building, it took like under 24 hours for me to appreciate what Andy brought to our program before. He helped create our offensive identity. And again, as we strive to get back to that creativeness. And again, some people get like you're too gimmicky in what you're doing. Well, we just want to continue to be very multiple in what we're doing, make it difficult for defenses to get lined up against us, and create opportunities for us to be successful. But having him back has definitely been a big plus for us.
Lance, on the defensive side of the ball, love the approach in the portal. You added a lot of weight up front with the kid from Tulane who was an all-conference defensive tackle. You brought in a boatload of experienced linebackers. Just what was your approach to get better on D?
Yeah, we had to get better on defense, guys. And you mentioned, first of all, James, that we had to get going. We had to get bigger up front. We played a little bit more with 3 down than we had in the past, and depth was an issue. Blake Harrell's, really emerging as a returning leader for us, but we had to go get some bigger bodies, and Trayvon is one that we really feel is going to be a great addition. We went for those bigger bodies. You mentioned the linebacker position. Now that one we got a little unique as we thought we were going to just maybe add 1, maybe 2, and what happens in today's portal world is young men within your program, when you're still trying to develop competition and embracing competition, they view portal additions as automatic starters. And that's something that we continue, and I'm sure that's a issue across the country, is just because you bring in guys in doesn't mean everybody's going to start. And then all of a sudden guys will go, I'm not going to start, I'm out. And so we ended up with a few more openings there than we had hoped for, which then allowed us to go get more experienced guys that have played and have, whether it be SEC type experience and some special teams and rotational type work that's really going to help us at that position and the depth that we need there, as well as very similar at the safety position for us too. But all these things have allowed us to, right now, early indications from our strength staff is that our team speed is significantly different than what it was a year ago. And of course, that is something that we want to continue to address and upgrade.
One of the areas you've had a lot of success in with the portal is the offensive line, going back to, bringing Mike Nowitzki with you and, Logan Brown, just to name a few guys that you brought in through the portal on the offensive line that have been successful. And this class is also full of offensive linemen, Casey Carpenter, just to name one. I guess, how do you evaluate offensive linemen, in the portal? What are you looking for, and what's made you successful in finding the right guys?
Well, again, you mentioned a couple of guys that have helped us. Enrique Cruz just left the combine playing really well. Bryce Foster, Kobe Baines have played college all-star games. So, we have been able to hit on some guys that way. Case Carpenter, as you said, came from Oklahoma State. When we had one other player leave to enter the portal, who ended up at Oklahoma State, ends up you got to find an interior guy. So we're looking at needs. We wanted to add length. We think we did so with Nick Morrow at the tackle coming from Cal. Connor Stroh's a guy that started 5 games at Texas last year, and he's really been somebody that has caught my eye here. He's very competitive. He's intense. He gives us a little bit of an edge up front. And again, we continue to look for size and athleticism that can do some of the things that we want to do within the versatility of our offense.
Lance, when you look at last season and carrying that over into this year, what are 1 or 2 things? I know we're so early in the process that you're thinking, okay, hey, we have to clean this up, or if we do this, we get back to a 9-10 win type season. Yeah.
Again, we've lost too many close games, guys, in the last 2 years. That's obvious. You guys know that. We've got to find a way to win close football games, and it's a lot of different things that we're looking at. Okay, why aren't we winning them in the fourth quarter? And that goes from depth to actual execution to practice models to play calling to coaching decisions. Everything has to be, you're not doing your job if you're not going to look at every little thing. And one of the things that when you ask me when we get started is I usually like to get things going before spring break. And this way now we've been able to get 8 weeks in the weight room, so we can a lot of new bodies, getting a chance to know them, finding out where they're at. We're going to condense spring ball just a little bit coming out of break, and we're also going to look at different ways that we practice that hopefully that we can sustain and do some things that allow us to be a better football team. And we talked about some of these positions. Is it a lack of depth late in the game that we're tired and not making plays? Is it, and that maybe not depth, but we got to have coaching confidence in young men to rotate so we are fresher later in the game? Is it play decision and play execution? Is it making decisions on down and distance, all those things? The other one that we have to do better, especially defensively, and talking with DK McDonald, that we struggled with last year a lot was, and it becomes challenging when you add a lot of new players, is communication. We have to be able to communicate defensively to one another, have confidence in what we're doing, that we're able to articulate that we're all on the same page of what we want to get executed. And sometimes that was a major breakdown for us last year.
Lance Leipold joining us here in our spring caravan as we're talking Kansas spring football. I think there's been a lot of different approaches to going overseas to play a game. This one's a little bit different because you're in season as opposed to playing a week 0 game in London. But, I guess how big of an opportunity is this to kind of represent Kansas and the United States over there against Arizona State? And then, what's the approach? Do you have to take a different approach?
Well, first of all, it's a great opportunity, I feel, and a lot of things that we look at. This is still a game. It's still college student athletes. It's life experiences and things. But I also do believe, and I'm sure we have talked about this before, guys, is everything that is essentially happening, almost everything in college football is trending towards a professional model. I think we would agree with that, and where it's going and where things are happening. And as we continue to find ways, whether it be for revenue streams, for fans, for whatever this may be, there's got to be new avenues, and there's got to be new ways to do this. And I think for our conference and really for the University of Kansas, we have a chance to be in the forefront and the cutting edge and playing an international conference game, not just a week 0 game. Now, is that challenging? Yes, because as we continue to work through all our logistics of departure times and game prep and acclimation to, and jet lag opportunity, a lot of those different things are going to be worked on through the rest of this spring, through the summer, as we get prepared to play Arizona State. So it is going to be unique, but coming back, that's the thing everyone has said also in these games, is you worry about the legs and how do you play afterwards. And I think having an open week the next week and a non-conference game to follow gives us a chance to put ourselves in a good stretch for once we get back to the States. But it's exciting. I think it's a chance of a lifetime. It's something that I've been excited about. You might have heard me say this before. Way back a long time ago, I was a graduate assistant at the University of Wisconsin. We played in Tokyo, Japan. And it's still a great memories, and it was late in the year, but it still is a great experience, and I think it will be for our players.
Oh yeah, I mean this is going to be a core memory for everybody on this team, which is so cool. The last position I've got to ask you about is running back, because your running back room reminds me on paper of what you had in 23, because you've got the big kid Willis from Syracuse, the kid from Colorado State, but then Dylan Edwards. Like Dylan Edwards, when he went down early last year, I felt like changed the entire trajectory of K-State's season because he's that dynamic. How is he fitting in? I guess I would start there. And what do you guys want to do with Dylan?
Yeah, well, first of all, you mentioned the other two, and they're two bigger backs that were productive at their last schools that we feel that give us a chance to be successful, to be probably both are more power runners. Corey Amakri's a young running back from Michigan who early enrolled, who we think has got a very bright future. Justin Thurman was a true freshman last year, injured his Achilles late in the year. Will miss spring, but should be ready for the fall. We're excited about that room. even though there's maybe not a clear-cut guy. You mentioned Dylan. It's been as we know, he's one of the more electric players in the backfield that can be in the Big 12 conference. And though last year is a very disappointing and frustrating year for him, he's excited to be a Jayhawk. He's worked extremely hard. We've been, I don't want to use the word cautious, but we've been very intentional about his way coming back into this off the foot injury, and again, I think from the time he came on campus unofficially to officially to becoming a Jayhawk, I think Andy Koldenicki has been awfully excited about how he's going to be able to use a guy with Dylan Edwards' athletic ability to be an explosive player again in this conference.
Kansas football coach Lance Leipold. I'm excited for next season, even more excited for the season after that when the stadium is finally finished. And I'm sure you are as well. It was great to be in there in the stadium this year. It looks amazing, and can't wait till it's totally finished. Lance, thanks so much for your time. Appreciate it very much. Have a great spring. We'll talk to you again soon. Thank you.
All right, thanks, Ari. You got the socks on today?
I got the socks on for you, buddy. Thank you.
All right. Have a great day, guys.
Thanks,
you
Lance.
too, bud. Thank you. Lance Leipold joining us here on Big 12 Radio in our spring caravan as our tour stops there in Lawrence briefly. We'll be doing our full breakdown in our spring caravan tour in Provo with BYU coming up in the final hour of the show. All right, on the way next, it's a Power Ranking Wednesday. We're Power Ranking the top 5 teams of the Big 12. No surprises who those 5 are, but where are they ordered? Well, James and I have the same. That's next. With James Wesley, I'm Ari Tepkin. This is Big 12 Today on Big 12 Radio. We are presented by Modelo, heard on TuneIn, watched on Big 12 Studios.
Low so he could attack. His first 2 steps are really, really good. That second step has improved a ton.
Well, Jaden Pierre cradling it and putting it home.
They beat you to the spot.
With that second life on this trip, it's Punch with a deep touch. And bouncing away, it's way wide. Here's a third chance. Edmonds puts it home. And Petty's right with him. 25 seconds of good defense, Texas Tech. Robinson swirling in and delivers a lead for TCU.
Big time shot by Micah Robinson. It's a screen or a slip, and how are we going to play Donovan Atwell? Play set up for him, knocks it down.
Edmonds retaliates for the Horned Frogs.
Yeah, that's just too easy. Just go straight up.
Yeah, Picasso would have been a bad free throw shooter.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah.
He might have shot it from the elbow.
8.5 in the game, 1 point TCU lead, and it throws.
Now, you don't want to foul now. You just want to play. You just want to play down to 10 seconds and block out when that shot goes up if you're Texas Tech.
They will let it ride down to 5. Robinson's open behind the defense for a jam. Petty almost got there.
Now you want to get him.
And foul in the backcourt. TCU wouldn't have minded that foul. And Robinson denied. Lost it. Edmonds sweeps it up.
Game going again and how to free up Christian Anderson more often than not. There's no doubt about it. And you need more from the Juan Watts, especially on the defensive end.
Well, that'll do it. They'll count that. They'll check at the monitor just to make sure. But TCU with another top 10 win.
Big 12 Radio, it's Big 12 Today, heard on TuneIn, watched on Big 12 Studios with James Westling. I am Ari Temkin. And let's not waste any time because we got to get right to it. It's power ranking time. Remember, it's not good enough to just have things in this world. You have to power rank them accordingly, and so that is what we do on Wednesdays. Every Wednesday, we power rank the top 5 teams of the Big 12, and then we power rank something random. So without further ado, let's power rank the top 5 teams of the Big 12.
Number 5.
All right, Ari, number 5 for me. I'm tired of just ranking the same 5 teams. We do it every week. We've been doing it every week for 2 months now. We need some new blood in the power rankings. At number 5, I have TCU.
Whoa.
They go into Lubbock last night, pick up a win. They are the sneaky, dangerous team of the teams I considered. They are the most for this 5th spot. Xavier Edmonds has just been on an absolute tear. 9 double-doubles in an 11-game stretch. He scored 15 points in 7 of those 9. TCU's won 7 of their last 10. They've won 4 in a row. They've won 7 of their last 8, I should say, or 8 of their last 9. This team's just on an absolute heater, and they've gone from outside of the NCAA tournament to part of the last 4 buys, according to Lenardi's latest bracketology, which I think they'll be completely off of that line when he updates his brackets.
Yeah, great call by you, by the way. I just went with the traditional 5 that we're all thinking of. But number 5 for me is Kansas. What a frustrating, maddening team. And last night was the perfect example of it. And there's just some weird stats. I mentioned Kansas is 1-5 this season when Darren Peterson takes at least 17 shots. How about this one? The Jayhawks are 9-2 without Darren Peterson, with wins over Arizona, NC State, and NC State. They're 12-6 with him. They also may end up with one of the worst offenses of the Bill Self era via Ken Palm, as they're in the 50s right now, which is insane when you consider that they have a number 1 overall pick on their roster. So, yeah, look, they have some big-time wins. They're 6-6 in Quad 1. They're 8-0 in Quad 2. So, they've had their damage in losses, in Quad 1. But still a team that's going to be probably a 4 seed right now based on this loss to Arizona State, and will probably end up getting that, avoiding that double bye and being the 5 seed in the Big 12 tournament. I've got Kansas at number 5.
Number 4.
Yeah, number 4 for me, and I actually considered putting Cincinnati in my top 5, but they're just on the outside looking in. So, I had to have somebody outside of that grouping, and Kansas was the team because of recent bias and that loss to Arizona State I left out. Iowa State I've got at number 4, but I have concerns about the Cyclones. Like, they're 11-6 in Big 12 play. Okay, they're 5-5 in true road games, so they haven't been very good outside of Hilton Coliseum. And again, just the way they disappear offensively at times is alarming to me. I love Tamin Lipsey and what he does leading that team, but a 17-point loss to Arizona. They shoot 29% from the field, and it was the second game in a row that they've not shot the ball well. And I'm concerned that teams have figured out how to take away Joshua Jefferson, which completely crumbles their offensive flow. That's back-to-back games where Texas Tech keyed on him, Arizona keyed on him, and that's a problem for the Clones. But I still have Iowa State at number 4.
Yeah, I also have Iowa State at number 4. I think to your point, both Kansas and Iowa State are 2 teams that are trending in the wrong direction here, both with some impressive wins, but both with some really weird losses. The Cyclones continue to be elite offensively, with at times struggling against really good defensive teams. Like in the loss to Arizona, they shot 29% from the floor. So, that just seems like their lot, where they, against elite defensive teams, they struggle, and especially in the half court. So look for that when Iowa State's bracket comes out. Do they play elite defensive teams, because they can struggle against those teams offensively.
Number 3.
Yeah, number 3 for me is I think a team that has probably the most variance in terms of what they could look like in the tournament, and that's Texas Tech. Losing at home to TCU was a shocker to me. I thought this team had kind of recovered from JT Toppin's injury, but last night was a perfect example of how matchups can be a real thing. Without JT Toppin, Xavier Edmonds had a field day. Texas Tech offense just couldn't find any rhythm. When they needed a basket, they didn't have their star to go to. They were on a 3-game winning streak going into that game, and they're 4-2 against the top 10. And they're 3-1 this year against top 5 teams. They beat then number 1 Arizona, then number 3 Duke, then number 6 Houston, then number 4 Iowa State. But then you have some head-scratching losses to Arizona State and TCU at home. I still have Texas Tech at number 3. They have a really high ceiling, but starting to see that they have a low floor.
Yeah, number 3 for me is actually Houston. The Cougs, 24-5, 11-5 at the Big 12. They're top 8 at Evan Mia, top 7 in Ken Palm. And, look, I think ultimately, we haven't seen Houston at its best yet. I think when you look at some of the teams that are in front of them, to me, we've seen those teams play at their best. Houston, it feels like we just haven't seen it. And especially, I think, they just don't have much of an interior presence on the offensive end, and maybe we expect them to have more of that than they do, without Juwan Roberts and what they are missing from last year. So, look, still a really good team with a high ceiling. If Uzon, and we'll see with tonight's game, can continue what he did on Saturday, that's a huge trend for Houston going in the right direction because they need Uzon in order for them to get back to a Final Four and to win a national championship, which was the expectation when the season started.
Number 2.
Yeah, number 2 for me, this is where I have Houston, a firm number 2, because I think they were just really tired during that 3-game skid, and they were all close, down to the wire type games. They had a lead at Allen Fieldhouse and then just completely lost their legs. I'm not concerned about Houston in any way. Kelvin Sampson gives his guys 2 days of rest, and they respond by beating Colorado by 40 and hanging over 100 points on a Colorado team that's not bad defensively in that 102-62 win. I think Kelvin Sampson getting Milos Uzan right is huge. For him to have 26, for him to bang 5 threes, that's been their kind of Achilles heel, and what they've been lacking is a consistent three-point shooter. If Uzan has turned a corner, I still believe Emmanuel Sharp's one of the best shooters in the country, and Fleming's can take over games. So this team, I think, is built for March, and I still am really excited about Houston, especially if they're a 2 seed in the NCAA tournament, as being a team that makes a run at a Final Four.
Number 2 for me is Texas Tech. And, despite the loss last night, I'm not going to knock them because I think TCU is a very good basketball team that's playing as good a basketball as we've seen them play all year right now. And that this is an elite team that just beat an elite team. And TCU over Texas Tech at home. Texas Tech's been the team that gets the wins on the road. I mean, nobody's been more impressive than them on the road and what they've done, except for TCU not doing to them what they've done to other people. Again, I think some of these post-top-end trends will hold up. I think, Atwell, Watts, Petty, it's just that Anderson only went for, 11 last night, and they just didn't get what they're used to getting out of Bamboye. Mosley brought it, but I think the margin for error of them without Toppin is much slimmer, and that's the biggest takeaway from this game. They just can't have off games, especially from Christian Anderson. Anderson needs to be the alpha, and needs to be scoring 20 to 30 points a game for this team to reach its potential, which we didn't see last night against TCU, which is an elite defense. So I'm not going to knock them for that. I've got Texas Tech at number 2.
Number 1.
I mean, Arizona just clinched the outright regular season title. That says everything to me. This team will be a 1 seed in the Big 12 tournament. They'll be a 1 seed in the NCAA tournament. I still think they can win the whole thing. I know there's talk about Duke and Michigan, and Duke's like the team to beat right now. I would love to see a Duke-Arizona matchup, which would be a rematch from a couple of years ago in the NCAA tournament. I love this Arizona team. They're stacked.
All right, yeah, Arizona's number 1. What else are you going to say, right? There's no other explanation or thoughts here. Arizona's number 1.
All right, guys. You guys know what the random power ranking of the...
I was trying to remember why we're randomly power ranking the greatest splits of all time.
James brought it up yesterday in the segment.
Right, no, but what was... do you remember the context, James?
Yes, we were talking about the importance of splits at the NFL Combine.
Yes.
And the 40-yard dash.
Yes.
I dropped that knowledge that the 40-yard dash dates back to special teams gunners, and we talked about the importance of splits. You brought up how much a delicious banana split just really hits the spot. We just decided, let's power rank some splits.
Yep, let's power rank some splits. All right, here we go.
Number 5.
All right, number 5 for me is the Bill Belichick Patriots split. The dynasty finally ended in January of 2024, And I just loved that fallout to see Tom Brady move on and win a Super Bowl in Tampa Bay, and just the complete demise of Bill Belichick, because he did Tom Brady dirty. The greatest dynasty in modern football finally ran out of gas. Oh, and it opened the door for my Kansas City Chiefs. So Bill Belichick, the Patriots split at number 5.
I've got the 7-10 split in bowling, number 5 for me. It is a miraculous shot that anybody can hit, quote unquote, with luck. But obviously the pros know how to do it better. You got to hit the outside of the left spin, which is what, the 7, to go across the lane to the right side, which is extreme. It's way easier said than done. But yeah, it's basically a miracle shot, holy grail of bowling moments. And I think the part for me that's the best about it is anybody can do it. Just got to get some luck. 7-10 split in bowling, number 5.
Number 4.
Man, I'm just going with a general sports analytics split. I love a good shooting split. I love a good quad split. But probably my favorite's just the old traditional home-road split, okay? Batting average at home versus away, points per game, shooting percentages, quarterback rating, team overall analytics, because travel fatigue, I think, is a real thing, especially when you're traveling 2 or 3 time zones away. I think being the comfort level of being in your own arena or your own stadium is a thing, and I think crowds and atmospheres have a major impact, especially in college basketball, when we're talking about a compact square footage space with 12, 13, 15,000 fans screaming, just wanting to rip your head off. Some guys are all-stars at home and role players on the road. I've got a good old home-road split, number 4.
All right, number 4 for me is the split of the Beatles. Some people know it just as the split, but easily the most iconic breakup for any band ever. I'm not even sure why I put it on my list, just because it's iconic, not that it's good or bad. Well, it was bad. It was real bad. It sucked. 1970, Beatles were on their game in the 60s, but 1970 with the split of the Beatles. That's number 4 on my list.
Number 3.
All right, number 3 for me is splitting the check, also known as going Dutch. Friends dividing a restaurant bill evenly.
Hate it.
Groups splitting by items or percentage. Nothing sets my nervous system on fire more than towards the end of a meal and knowing that it's going to be $3, $4, who knows how many $100, and who's going to grab this check. And then it's the whole, like, you want to suggest that you'll cover the check, but you really don't want to. It happens with family dinners all the time. It's like, oh, Dad, I forgot my wallet. Sorry. The math. One person had steak and 3 cocktails. Somebody else barely nibbled on an appetizer. Split that check.
I love it. The best is when the waiter or waitress asks a group before the meal starts if we want to split the check, and that's what sets my nervous system ablaze. It's like, how do I answer this? Are you gonna take it? Am I gonna take it? Are we splitting? Let's split. Yeah, let's do it.
Oh yeah, dude, because that sets the tone for the whole meal.
Yeah, you're right. Number 3 for me is the split finger fastball. One of the greatest pitches in the history of baseball. If you've got a split finger fastball that bites, you've got a hell of a pitch. And some of the greatest pitchers in the history of the game had dynamic split finger fastballs. Roger Clemens, Bruce Sutter, even Shohei has a great split finger fastball. And it's just cool because you completely spread your fingers apart. So the index finger and the middle finger completely split apart. And it looks like a fastball, presents as a fastball, and then just whips along. The split finger fastball, number 3 for me.
Number 2.
All right, number 2 for me, I'm going into sports media and the Mike and Mike split. Like this legendary ESPN morning radio show duo that ended in 2017. They had an 18-year run. And on the surface, it was, well, Mike Greenberg is leaving to host Get Up. Mike Golick is going to do his own radio show. But behind the scenes, this thing was nasty.
Yeah.
And this was also, like this lasted longer than just about every Hollywood marriage on the table. From 2000 to 2017, I mean, they defined not just ESPN, any sports talk morning show. Like, everybody knew Mike and Mike. To be on air from 2000 to 2017 is remarkable in its own, and I hope they can make up, because that's the way it ended was not good.
Yeah, I mean, it shows in those kinds of relationships how difficult they are to maintain over years. Ego gets in the way, and yeah, they did not like each other behind the scenes, especially at the end of it, which was too bad because you're right, it was a very good talk show. Not one that I liked, but it was a very well-known and good talk show. Okay, number 2 for me, the split screen. I mean, whether it's sports, being able to watch multiple games at the same time, or just a great, dynamic cinematography move in movies or television shows, the split screen. Directors like Brian De Palma did it countlessly in movies, but I mean, you think about sports broadcasts using split screen, showing both coaches in a field goal situation, or just watching multiple games. There's something better than being able to split the screen, whether it's in one broadcast or multiple broadcasts. The split screen, iconic. Probably too low on my list at number 2.
Number 1.
All right, number 1 for me, nerd alert, the stock split. If a stock trades at 600, the company does a 2-for-1 split. You can now get it for half the price. Companies do it to make shares more affordable, attract retail investors like myself. Apple has split its stock 5 times, guys. Recently, a 4-for-1 split in 2020, which made it a quarter of the price. A good old traditional stock split. I'm here for it. Let's talk finance.
Yeah, I'm going to go in a different direction with my number 1. My number 1 is the full splits. James, can you ever do the splits?
Just a traditional full split. I'm working on it, dude. I'm getting a little more bendy.
Could you ever do it?
No.
Yeah, I mean, talk about flexibility. The move where you can extend your legs 180 degrees apart. It's a great move, and certainly number 1 on my list. The full split, number 1 on my list. No explanation needed. Kind of like Arizona. Like when you think of power ranking the top 5 splits of all time, this is the first one you think of. It's got to be, but yet James didn't even have it on his list.
Can you do this? Can you do the splits already?
No, but I enjoy watching. I enjoy watching people that can do it. It's impressive. It's a very impressive move. All right, that is the top 5 splits. By the way, this show has been on. Big 12 Radio has been on for like 7 years, and so many of the random power rankings we've done have been duplicated and triplicated and quadruplicated. If that's even a word, it's probably not, but I don't care. This is the first time we've ever, in 7 years, almost 8 years of Big 12 Radio, done the splits. So way to go, James. That's James. I'm Ari. This is Big 12 Today on Big 12 Radio. We are presented by Modelo, heard on TuneIn, watched on Big 12 Studios. Brian Thornton, the Big 12 VP of Men's Basketball, joins us next. It's Big 12 Today on Big 12 Radio.
Play for Mike Golick story room.
'60s, maybe even the '50s, in case State will want to get up and down the court. Johnson guarded by Moore, 5 on the shot clock. Johnson off the window and down for Nate Johnson. Castillo doing a good job on Huff so far.
Yeah, a lot of attention on him with this lineup.
Moore steps into a 3. 19 in the road win at Creighton.
They did everything right on that road win at Creighton.
Chance Moore, a strong take. Now back to the dribble handoff to Nate. Kostic frees up for 3. Air ball and a hammer for Kamari McGriff.
Flicking it off his fingertips. You've seen Kostic just shoot the ball completely over the basket, and McGriff was ready.
Swatted by McGriff into the backcourt. Look at the hustle and the floater, and we are tied.
No way, Kamari McGriff. Can you get the ball into McGriff? They deny him with double teaming.
Floater from C.J. Jones. Rebounded Manning. Nate Johnson hits. Huge 3 from Nate Johnson.
That may be one we talk about in postgame. But West Virginia does respond quickly, and now
for 3. Back to for another 3. Count it, but it won't matter. West Virginia needing a win tonight.
Big 12 Radio. We are presented by Modelo, heard on TuneIn, watched on Big 12 Studios. Our Big 12 game of the week in basketball is Saturday. Texas Tech at BYU. BYU has been struggling a little bit, including last night's loss to Cincinnati. Texas Tech loses to TCU last night, so both look to rebound in their season finale. Texas Tech at BYU Saturday, 10:30 Eastern, 9:30 Central. That's our game of the week here on TuneIn. All right, Brian Thornton joining us in studio here, the VP of basketball for the Big 12, VP of men's basketball. James Westling, Ari Temkin, Brian Thornton. How are you, Brian?
I'm doing well, man. Good to be with you guys.
Yeah, great to have you. We were just talking at the break. 3 technicals assessed to Kansas in the first half of their game against Arizona State last night. Self was ejected. And you were just talking about this, like, and it's obvious, like, there's frustration this time of year with coaches, with fans, with players, with officials. Like, it's the end. Like, the end is near, but yet you're closing out the regular season. The last couple of weeks, it feels like, of the regular season can be a slog at times.
Yeah, I mean, everybody's a little bit irritable this time of the year. I think that if you go back and look at, the amount of technicals or ejections that take place in late February, early March, I'm sure it's more than it is in December or early January. But, the stakes are high, and they continue to get higher just with the investment the institutions are putting in, that fans are putting in. And so people feel that this time of year. Everybody's fighting for inches. They're scratching, they're clawing, they're trying to either make it into the NCAA tournament. For some guys, they're trying to fight for seeds. For other guys, they're trying to hold on to their jobs. So it's not a surprise that, people start to feel that way this time of year. And it's a long year. When you really think about when these guys get started, they get started in the summer and, with preseason camp, and then, they're 30 games in, and, quite honestly, our officials are tired too. They've had a long run as well. So, we're all trying to get to the finish line, and we're trying to get there in the best way that we can.
Brian, can you elaborate more on just the wear and tear that a season can have on these teams? Because, I mean, you've been through it as a coach and a player. What's it like, and how do you stay dialed in this late in the year?
Well, I think that's where coaching really comes in. The way that these teams are constructed now is different than it's ever been before. This is, for most teams, their players are 10-month mercenaries. They come in, they're hired guns, and coaches that are able to put together a roster in short order, then they're able to get them to gel, but they're also able to kind of keep guys in the boat. That's kind of the biggest thing that you have to do, especially this time of year when we kind of talked about teams are going in different directions. Some teams are trending up, some teams are trending down, some teams are trying to hold on to the rope. And coaches and staffs are really important, assistant coaches, about kind of pouring into guys, rallying guys together, putting a positive voice in their ears, because we know that, because of agents and families and all the other things, that there's a lot of competing voices for these young men and young women. And coaching staffs really come into play about how you can kind of keep the narrative positive and keep the main thing.
This is a very interesting bubble in the Big 12. We know who's in, and there's a good collection of bubble teams now. I'm curious for kind of your position in that. Do you have communication with members of the committee? I mean, how are you monitoring the bubble? Are you working with teams? I'm just, again, have no idea here. What's your position in
all of the above?
Yeah.
Everything that you said is part of my responsibility. As you said, we have a blessing in that we have a lot of teams that are in secure spots that are fighting for high seeds. And then, we have a pretty strong bubble, right now too, that we have quite a few teams that are fighting in the last week of the season, which is what you want. Our goal has always been to get at least 8 teams into the tournament. It feels like we're right in the mix for that. We're probably somewhere between 7 and 9, and depending on how things fall over the course of the next 10 days or so. So from my standpoint, I stay in constant communication with the NCAA basketball committee. In fact, I have a Zoom with them tomorrow where we'll kind of go through all of the teams. They'll ask me, how I see our rankings stacking up. I'm able to provide some context around wins, around losses. When, maybe a team lost a game they shouldn't have. Was there a reason? I'll give you an example. Cincinnati right now is playing some of the best basketball in the country, and they have a couple chinks in their on their resume.
Yeah.
And, they didn't have the greatest non-conference, but they've really started rolling downhill late. And so a couple of, anecdotes that I might provide to the committee are, one, Jizzle James didn't join the team until December 17th. So, they're a way above 500 team with Jizzle James than they were without Jizzle James. Additionally, they lost a game to Eastern Michigan. Not a great loss. Probably a quad 3, quad 4 loss. But there's context around that. One, Jizzle James wasn't playing, and two, Baba Miller wasn't playing in that game. So those are two. I mean, it doesn't necessarily justify the win, but it provides some context to the committee around why that loss might have taken place, and why you need to maybe view Cincinnati from a slightly different lens than just what you see on paper.
Do you think Cincinnati has more work to do?
Well, I think they have to continue to win. That they've done a great job lately. Again, like I said, their non-conference wasn't probably what they wanted it to be.
Yeah.
But if you look at their last 10 games or so, I think they've won 7 of their last 8 or something like that. So they're certainly putting themselves in position. If you trust Joe Lunardi, which I think that we all have to look at what he does, because he's kind of the gold standard, at least from what we can see. And, he has them in the next 4 out right now. So I think that they're certainly trending. They were kind of off the grid, and now they're very much on the grid. I was watching him last night, and he said that they put themselves in position to be in position.
Yeah.
And, they certainly have a huge game on Saturday against TCU, at TCU. And then we'll kind of see where things land in Kansas City next week.
Yeah, Brian, man, I love that you're going to highlight Cincinnati, because they, like you said, they've won like 7 of their last 10. They have definitely won 6 of their last 7. And they go on the road and they beat Kansas by 16. And then the way they've just destroyed their last 2 opponents, Oklahoma State and BYU last night. I mean, hanging 90 on BYU, to me they look like a clear-cut NCAA tournament team that's hampered by losses that, frankly, in my opinion, when Jizzle James wasn't part of this team, shouldn't matter back in November.
Well, it all has to matter. I think that everybody could say that, our team was this or our team was that at a different point of the year. But I think without question, they've shown that their caliber, to win some of the games that they've won this year in the fashion that they've won. Wes Miller is doing a fantastic job down the stretch here. And, if you're looking at the eye test, I think it'd be hard-pressed for the committee to say they don't look like an NCAA tournament team.
Yeah, currently the latest Joey bracketology has Cincinnati as the next 4 out. So just interesting stuff to look at. 8 teams in, according to Joe Lunardi, with Cincinnati as part of the next 4 out. And I think West Virginia's loss last night did itself no favors there. So I think you're right, maybe anywhere between 7 and 9. But it feels like TCU's done enough at this point, right?
I mean, I think just like we talked about Cincinnati, I think TCU has shown its merit. Going on the road and winning at Texas Tech last night, I think that says a lot about what Jamie Dixon has done with that team. That they're a little undersized, but wow, they've played really good basketball and they've just found a way. Different than maybe some of the other teams in the league, like Cincinnati, for example. They also have some real wins too. They beat Florida, they beat Wisconsin. And there's context around some of their losses as well, but they're probably 5 or 6 possessions away from being a top 15 team in the country when you really think about it.
Wow.
They had Michigan on the ropes. They were up with 4 minutes to go in that game. They were up against Notre Dame at the end of the game and lost in overtime. They had Kansas down 20.
Yeah.
So when you kind of think about a few of the games that they've been in that the ball didn't bounce their way, or they weren't able to kind of close those games out when they were up late, all of a sudden you flip those losses into wins, and that's a team that looks like a 5 seed.
But they have figured out how to close. That Kansas game was atrocious. Not just the 20-point lead, but the 6 or whatever they were down. Kansas was down with like a minute to go. They're closing that. Like it's gone 180 degrees the other way. Like they figured out how to close.
Well, you learn.
Yeah.
You learn. And Coach Dixon's been doing it for a long time. He's had a lot of success, both at Pittsburgh and TCU, and he's found a way to win with sometimes, not the most amount of talent. And, I think that it's no surprise that his team has gotten better over the course of the year, and they've learned lessons from the Michigan game. Or, even when they lost to Michigan, we probably didn't exactly know how good Michigan was going to end up being.
Right.
Notre Dame, they were playing a Notre Dame team that's a different team than Notre Dame is now. with some of the players that they had at the time. And so I think that they've had some learning lessons, and, they're finding a way out to close. They've had some guys really step up and become leaders, and, they're going to be a tough out for guys.
Brian, when it comes to how you put the schedule together, is that pretty much, I guess, the idea of teams going out to the desert and playing Arizona and Arizona State, and then going up to Utah and playing BYU and Utah? I know that the league puts these little road swings together, but Big 12 teams are now 4-12 immediately after playing Arizona, and Arizona State's got 5 of its 7 league wins against teams on that post-Arizona, beat-down hangover. Do you think you'll get any feedback from coaches hey, man, this is brutal, we'd rather come out here 2 separate times, or do you think is it locked in to stay the way it is?
Well, I think we'll always take coaches and administrators' perspectives into account when we're building a schedule out. I think generally speaking, what we've heard in the past is that, teams like to make that run together. When they do have an opportunity, when they're going to Utah, they want to play 2 games. When they're going to Arizona, they want to play 2 games because they don't want to crisscross the country any more than they have to. It's not a perfect science, but, when you have the leagues the size that ours are, or the Big Ten or the ACC, that's the way the schedule is typically going to be built. There's efficiencies there, and it almost starts to feel more like an NBA schedule. The way that you do it, you go on road trips and you have swings where you play 2 games at a time over the course of 4 or 5 days, and you got to pack your lunch. you got to have all your stuff together, and but again, it's not perfect. But if coaches want to talk about alternatives, that's something that we'll talk about. But we certainly haven't received that feedback per se yet.
Brian Thornton, VP of Men's Basketball. Can't wait to be with you in Kansas City next week. What a great finish it's been, and can't wait to see how this thing goes.
Awesome. Good to see you guys.
Yeah, great to see Brian Thornton visiting us in studio. Great stuff, as always, as we get from Brian here at the end of the season, along with James Wesley. I'm Ari Temkin. All right, our spring caravan rolls along. We're stopping in Stillwater, Oklahoma next, and talking with the new head football coach of Oklahoma State, Eric Morris, is next. It's Big 12 Today on Big 12 Radio, presented by Modelo. Heard on TuneIn, watched on Big 12 Studios.
You see they're double teaming Jizzle James. They're not going to let him play pick and roll tonight. But here's the problem. Then you got to rotate and scramble out of it. And they get it to one of their best shooters in the corner. So much easier for the perimeter players to get open looks and share the basketball. Great ATO out of the timeout by Coach Wes Miller.
Cincinnati not letting BYU inside the arc, and a turnover. Jizzle James, the steal. Jizzle James, the finish. Jalen Celestine, transition 3, his second triple of the game.
He can just see over the top of defenses, and that really helps his vision.
Zone defense out of bounds. Talked about that earlier. BYU flexes into that, but nobody's stepping out to put it. So BYU can get DeBonsa involved. He's got 6 points, 3 turnovers on 3 of 7 shooting. And Harris knocks it loose from behind. Sincere Harris unable to overtake the Mountaineers. And ended up losing 79-71. DeBonsa.
It's such a battle in this league.
Celestine step back 2-pointer for Jalen Celestine. You can get hot late and prove yourself and get some marquee wins.
Absolutely.
And then the selection committee has to make a tough decision. A rare turnover for Cincinnati. 90-plus points in 4 of their last 7 games. The offense humming for Cincinnati. Wes Miller.
Big 12 Radio. This is Big 12 Today, presented by Modelo, and our Modelo spring road trip continues as we tour Big 12 country and taking a quick pit stop on our way to Provo and Stillwater, Oklahoma, to talk with the first-year head football coach of the Oklahoma State Cowboys, Eric Morris, joining us here on Big 12 Radio. It's great to have you on, Coach Morris. How are you?
I'm fantastic. How about you guys?
Doing very well, thank you. Really excited to have you a part of the Big 12. You know, and there's so many things to get to talk with you about, but let's start with your path. You know, you've had a really interesting path. You know, I know when you were on with Andy Staples and Ari Wasserman on 3, you mentioned, you know, that many of your mentors told you that you were making career suicide when you took the Incarnate Word job. You know, just tell us about your path and your biggest influences and, you know, the quote-unquote career suicide you took at taking that job.
Yeah, I've had an interesting path. I think, you know, I've always prided myself. I think I'm proving people wrong. I think I had that approach when I was a player, and not many people gave me a chance to play at the Big 12 level and went on to be successful there. And then obviously just had so many great coaches that were around me at that time, with Mike Leach's staff and Mike being, you know, the one that took a chance on me, both as a player and a guy who gave me my first chance as a full-time position coach. And so owe a ton to Coach Leach, obviously. I still model a lot of my program around Mike. In fact, last night we had Pirates Paradise, which is mat drills that we start at 10 o'clock at night. And you know, it's pretty miserable for our kids to sit there and think about it all day. We used to call it midnight maneuvers with Coach Leach, and still, when I call some of the old Leach guys and tell them I'm still doing midnight maneuvers, they think I'm crazy in this era. But yeah, I think, you know, Leach is probably my biggest influence, and then obviously I think, you know, you see Dana Holgerson and Lincoln Riley and Sonny Dykes, who were my position coaches, are guys that had a big influence on me as well. And but yeah, I mean, taking the Incarnate Word job, I think it was stepping out of the box a little bit, and it was a place that had no history, a place that had no resources. No traditions, and so really it was a blank slate that I could go and start something and see if I could get something started in the Southland. And luckily, you know, early on in that little sequence, our second year there, we signed Cam Ward, who ended up being the first pick of the draft. And I think anytime you're able to get a kid of that caliber, but it wasn't just Cam. I mean, we had really good players around Cam, and we're able to win, you know, 2 or 3 championships there in the Southland and kind of change the trajectory of that program.
Eric, you were like one of the biggest names out there this offseason. What made Oklahoma State the right fit for you?
Yeah, I think, you know, some of the things here that people think maybe are a turnoff were actually something my family and I were looking for. I mean, the fact that this is a small community. My wife and I both grew up in really small farming communities. And we're at the stage in our life where we have a 10-year-old and a 5-year-old. And for us to raise those kids in a place like Stillwater was something that was very encouraging for us, something that we were looking for. And so it's been such a welcoming community. I mean, I think it's just been phenomenal for not only me, but my wife and my kids to be able to embrace ourselves in Stillwater and get out in the community and go, you know, experience everything this town's about and go support the other, you know, programs that are having success. I mean, we've been to a ton of basketball games right now. Obviously, the golf program's been so good for the past, you know, 20 years or so. Been to some baseball games. Wrestling has been phenomenal. I've never watched a wrestling match in my life. I'm like the biggest wrestling fan ever right now. And so it's been good for us to be able to, you know, be at this level, at the P4 level, but also raise my family and be a part of a community that's such a small-knit type family.
Yeah, Oklahoma State wrestling is the best in the Big 12, and it's a really good conference, so it's a great point about Oklahoma State wrestling. We're talking with Eric Morris here. You know, I'm so intrigued by how you handle and develop the quarterback position. And look, I mean, there's some big heavy hitters on this list. I mean, Patrick Mahomes, Cam Ward, John Mateer, you know, and now Drew Mestemaker, to name a few. But even some of these guys that are less heralded and maybe haven't gone on to have, you know, Hall of Fame NFL careers like Mahomes, they've all had career years under you. At North Texas going back, you know, before Mestemaker, Chandler Morris had his best season with you as the head coach. And even before him, these guys have sort of outlier seasons when you step in. So, what do you do? How do you coach the quarterback position?
Well, if I told you, I'd have to kill you. I'm just joking. So, and same thing. I think Coach Leach was such an interesting guy in the way he taught the quarterback. And then right after him, I had Coach Kingsbury that I worked for 5 years, and they were two totally different the way that they thought about the position, the way they taught it, the way that you studied, the way that you prepared, the way you did drills. And so I thought I took the positives, from both of them. Mike thought really broadly, and he wanted to see space and not talk about coverage, and he didn't talk about, all the different specifics. I mean, you're going to go through your reads in our offense, and you're going to be really good at it. And then Cliff Kingsbury was so detailed and so organized, and he was Tom Brady's backup for a couple of years, Drew Brees' backup. So he'd been around some of the best minds, and they created all these different quarterback notes and the way that they would challenge one another and study. And so we've kind of put together a little system that combines some of that together. And I think just the way that we do it in the meeting room, and then the way that transfers from the meeting room to the practice field. And then ultimately, we want to get them ready from Monday till Friday, and Saturday, like, we don't do much with them. Really, it's almost the opposite. Like, we give them the keys to the car. We allow them to make checks out there if they're seeing stuff. I want them to be super comfortable on game day and be able to have some ownership in what they're doing on game day. And so, and I don't do this alone. I mean, at Incarnate Word, and, I have Mac Leftwich, who's now the offensive coordinator at Texas Tech, was my quarterback coach, and now I have a guy named Sean Brophy who played quarterback for me at Incarnate Word. And so I've had some really good people around me, too, that have helped me get these guys ready to go out there and perform on Saturdays.
And tell us how you recruited Drew Mestemaker as a guy that did not play quarterback in high school.
Yeah, by fate, by luck, don't know what it is yet, but no, so excited that we have Drew. Now, the one thing I think that's impressive, and Drew didn't play, and obviously, I had a key in a friend of mine who's a quarterback coach. They called me and told me he saw Drew throw, thought, how good he was at just purely throwing the ball. Didn't know, if the kid could process information or go out there and do what he's doing on Saturdays. But I think, I've never cared who is the guy that's pulling the trigger. Like, I've always been fair, and whoever gives us the best chance to win is going to go out there and play for us. And so, I think Drew was shocked when, he came in as a freshman walk-on, didn't play in high school. And then all of a sudden, a month and a half into camp, he's our backup quarterback, and he's going out there and getting reps, and he had beat out these 3 other scholarship guys that we had that were older. I think that was kind of Drew's first moment. He's like, holy smokes, that coach believes in me a little bit. And then, we played really we played at Texas Tech. We were getting beat at North Texas Drew's freshman year, and so just kind of in some mop-up duty. Drew goes out there in the last 2 drives and leads 2 amazing drives, scores a touchdown on one of them. So I think that was kind of the first moment, looking at during the huddle, realizing, hey, he wasn't anxious out there. He wanted to go out there. He didn't stutter when he was making the play calls to the huddle. He had the confidence about him out there communicating to the guys, and goes down there and scores a touchdown and runs off in Jones AT&T Stadium and chest bumps a couple guys and scored his first college touchdown. And so, yeah, that was kind of the first time I'm like, okay, this kid has a little moxie about him and has a little swagger about him. And it's not only is he a good practice player, but I think he might be able to do this in a real-life game.
Mm. Well, and Eric, I remember before a North Texas game, you were telling us kind of your recruiting philosophy and like how you find some of these hidden gems. Caleb Hawkins, the incredible year he had at running back. I think you offered him after watching him play basketball when he had just a couple of sick highlight reel dunks. And then I think you said you offered Baker Mayfield after watching him play baseball. So can you elaborate on some of those stories and how you find these guys?
Yeah, I liked all the guys had good tape, good football tape. I liked him before I saw him play the second sport. So, but I've always really believed in going and watching these guys. I think it's really hard to see, a guy's expressions on the football field, the way he communicates with his teammates, leadership traits, just how he handles adversity, how he's going to respond, what's his body language like. And it's hard to tell with a kid in a helmet and in this full gear out there on a football field. I think really watching them, in these different sports, especially basketball. I love watching basketball and watching them communicate and see what kind of teammate they are. But yeah, all these guys, when you go out and watch them and you watch them, they get these different traits and athletic abilities. I think from throwing a ball, from spatial awareness, from playing with their eyes up and seeing defenses. And so I've always loved to go and see just what kind of athlete they are. And Mike Leach told me a long time ago. I was the receivers coach at Washington State, and I went to watch a receiver, and I filmed him on my iPhone for Mike to send back some video, and I only filmed him catching the ball because he's a receiver. And so Mike sent back to me, and he said, "Well, did you film him throwing the football?" And I said, "No, Coach, I didn't film him throwing it. Like, he's a receiver. Why would I film him throwing it?" And he said, "Well, usually guys that have grown up playing catch their whole life, they're really good at throwing it too. The best receivers I've ever had know how to throw it." He said, "Well, he's not going to be the quarterback for us, but he at least looks natural throwing the football." I remember thinking to myself, like, what am I even doing? So I went back to that school and I filmed the receiver throwing the ball. Like, I actually did it. And I was, 23. Like, I remember telling, one of my fellow teammates back at the time that was a new coach in it, that how crazy Mike Leach was. He wanted me to film the receivers throwing the football. But now, like, as I've evolved and my mind, like, kind of thinks around it, I actually think it's pretty smart. And I think that guys that know how to, if you really watch a guy that knows how to throw a football, like, he usually has pretty good ball skills, even if he's a receiver or running back.
Yeah, that's great stuff. Cannot wait to visit with you at Media Days here in a few months. Have a great spring, Coach. Thanks so much for your time. Be well.
God bless, guys. Have a great week.
You too. Take care. Thanks, Eric. Oklahoma State football coach Eric Morris is joining us here on Big 12 Radio as part of our spring caravan. This is our Modelo spring road trip, heading out across Big 12 country and making a stop here at Oklahoma State. Along with James Westling, I'm Ari Temkin. It's Big 12 Today on Big 12 Radio.
Johnson
season, 139-24 in his career after a loss, and they lost Arizona on Saturday. To play zone against, but we've actually played it pretty well. And Johnson lost it, poked out of his hands, and Kansas gets the turnover. Here's Peterson on the run, the jump, and the hammer to Cole Rosario. Really fly. Odom, deep three. That'll splash down.
Part of that is Melvin Council remaining aggressive.
Big Johnson enters it inside. Truitt, good position down low. Rolls to the rim, couldn't get it to go. 1 for 9 in the second half for ASU. Peterson, oh, to Padunga. And the Jayhawks are flying in this second half. Odom. Here's Johnson. 12 to shoot. Odom, the triple. Up and down. What a trip down the floor for ASU.
Darren Peterson needs to just completely take this thing over.
Odom. Turn in the corner off the Dunga. The floater, no. The tip won't go. Inside. Offensive rebound. And the hammer. So now they're going to try to burn some clock, or are they? To the rim for 2 more. Masamba Chop stretches that lead to double figures.
Good poise and vision from Mo Odom. Give him another assist as well.
McDowell started it up to White. Back it goes to McDowell. He hit a 3 earlier. He can't connect on this one. The Arizona State Sun Devils shock the Big 12 with a 70-60 win over 14th ranked Kansas in a court storm in Sun Devil country.
Big 12 Radio. It's Big 12 today. And our Modelo Spring Caravan rolls along to Provo. Where's that truck? Thank you. Modelo Spring football, earned, not given, James. Let's talk BYU football because the full-time fan knows no off-season. Modelo's off-season optimism is
mandatory.
Thank you. Let's dig into BYU, and then we'll visit with Kalani Sitake, the football coach for the BYU Cougars. If you're just joining us, we've had 3 football coaches on today, but we're talking spring football about BYU. And, James, the Cougs have won 23 of their last 27 games in the last 2 seasons in the Big 12. Their first year in the Big 12 was forgettable, but the last 2 seasons have shown how strong that they can be. They've started spring practice already with a pro day on March 20th, and then their spring showcase will be on April 3rd. And big picture here, Bear Bachmeier's development. You know, Bear Bachmeier stepped in as a true freshman last year after spending spring in Provo in Palo Alto, California. Now he spent spring in Provo getting ready for year 2 with Aaron Roderick. But it'll be almost an entirely new pass-catching operation for him with Parker Kingston, his expulsion from the team with some pretty heinous charges that have been levied against him. So they're kind of starting over from square one at wide receiver, but they do bring back a ton of players at a ton of important positions, especially on the defensive side of the football. James, what stands out to you big picture about BYU as they head into spring?
Big picture, there's no reason to believe this team won't be right back at the top of the Big 12 competing for a Big 12 title, even with the departure of Parker Kingston at wide receiver. This team went through a similar situation last year, late in the process, with their quarterback, an even more important position, and they were just fine. They do lose their top 3 pass catchers from last year. So Bear Bachmeier had all this experience around him, and now the guys that are catching passes from him, there are some familiar faces with his brother Tiger, with Hagan, who's a little lightning bug. But losing Kingston and Chase Roberts and your tight end Carson Ryan does hurt. But offensively, there's a lot to be excited about, especially up front with the offensive line. They bring back their center in Bruce Mitchell, and then they attacked the offensive line in the portal. And I think their portal class, by the way, is top 15 in the country, according to 24/7 composite ratings. But I think it gets overlooked because they didn't bring in this huge haul. They only brought in about a dozen guys. but the guys that they were very selective in who they recruited, and the transfers that they brought in up front is probably the most exciting part for me. Like, they bring in Paki Finau, an offensive lineman from Washington, who they recruited aggressively out of high school. He was a 4-star recruit. He chose Washington over BYU and Auburn and Miami and Oregon. Played in all 12 games for Washington last year. Started 4 at left guard. Had a solid pass blocking grade. Played 229 pass blocking snaps. Like, they bring in experience. Then they bring in an offensive lineman from Utah State who was not a starter going into last season. Well, Utah State was getting clobbered by Texas A&M. They put him on the field, and he played really well. He earned the start the next week against Air Force, and he started the rest of the season. He's a guy that only allowed 3 sacks all season, just 1 sack over his last final 5 games. So that's kind of where I start, in the trenches on the offensive line, because that's one area I think they need to be better than they were last year, and I think they will be.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. I think that is without a doubt, aside from like the obvious Bear Bachmeier year 2, wide receiver, upheaval, offensive line is it. I mean, they brought in a ton, and we'll talk with Kalani Sitake about this. I mean, it's a good place to start to have your, all everything center and Bruce Mitchell coming back. And there are certainly some guys that will be interesting in terms of trying to fill some holes and compete. I think, to your point, like, there's certainly some spots that are solidified, but they're going to have a lot of good competition amongst many of the spots on the offensive line, and I think that's huge. The other thing is Kelly Poppinga steps in as their new defensive coordinator, and they lose Jay Hill. He goes, with Kyle Whittingham to Michigan, and so Poppinga, who's been around, and I think the hiring of Poppinga, and we'll talk with Kalani about this, did a really good job to help to solidify many of their players that might have left to jump ship and join Jay Hill with Michigan. It says a lot about this program that they didn't really lose anybody on the defensive side of the ball despite losing their defensive coordinator.
Yeah, and by comparison, Utah lost a ton of guys to Michigan. They went with Kyle Whittingham. Defensively, that's where they should be elite. Like, I love the linebacker from Cal. He was the number 1 rated linebacker transfer in the nation. He's from Utah, Cade Ulave. And then they add Jake Clifton, another linebacker who's from Kansas State, and started for K-State 2 years ago. Played in 19 career games, but then he went on a 1-year missions trip, so he wasn't on the field last year. He's returned from that missions trip, and he's going to be a player that I think is plug and play right away. They add a corner from Mississippi State, Javen Williams, who's 6'2", long-armed, looks a lot like Elijah Johnson, who is so good for them. And then, circling back, number 1, Poppinga stepping in, the defense doesn't change, in my opinion. I know Jay Hill was a very sought-after defensive coordinator, but all of these guys that are now kind of stepping up in their role learned from him. So the defense, I think, will look very similar. But at receiver, they add this kid from Oregon who's 6'6", 210 pounds, former 4-star, has contested catch ability, who transfers from Oregon, Kyler Casper. And then the 2 tight ends. I had 2 of the top 5 tight ends coming in this league, both headed to BYU, which just fits their system perfectly with what they try to do on the offensive side of the football.
Yeah, well said. And one of the guys you haven't mentioned, but I know you brought him up in our top newcomer series, which would be their linebacker from Cal, Cade Ulave, 6'1", 235 pounds. One of the guys they do lose in the defense is Jack Kelly. He was, hugely important for them, and they're going to replace him with Ulave, and so their defense from a linebacker perspective shouldn't take much of a step back by adding Ulave, who's a big time add in the portal.
Yeah, he's their number 1 transfer. I mean, he's the number 1 rated linebacker in the nation coming out of the portal. So you pair him with Isaiah Glasker, who's back. Now, remember, he battled some injuries late in the season. You add Jake Clifton, there's your 3. And then you still have Evan Johnson back in the secondary. Therian Alexander III is back. Tanu Vasa's back on the defensive line. Like, this team... And then they added some guys, some beef up front on the defensive line as well in the portal as part of those dozen that they brought in. So it's the BYU way. They have a lot of player retention. They've got a lot of starters back, and then they piece together these really impactful transfers. And I can see why you're so high on them on paper as maybe being the favorite.
Yeah, they just return so much. But let's stick on the offensive side because Bear Bachmeier was really good last year, except for the 2 games that he played against Texas Tech, where he looked like a true freshman, especially in the Big 12 championship game. How much of a step can he take, will he take, especially when you consider the offensive line should be improved, but the wide receiver position is very much up in the air. But the running back is back, right? L.J. Martin, who was the Big 12's leading rusher, is back. So I feel like it's like, but this, but that. Like, receivers aren't there, but you get your running back. Well, your offensive line's better, but how much more improved will Bachmeier be in year 2?
Yeah, I see an uptick offensively at every position except wide receiver.
Yeah.
Because Parker Kingston was the guy that turned 6-7 yard catches into
6-7. Sorry. It's just now go ahead. Sorry.
You have to. I should have said 7 or 8 yard catches. Set you up for that one. But those shorter completions turn into really explosive plays. And if you look at Bear, his worst game of the year was probably the Big 12 championship. He was pressured every snap. The kid was just beat to pieces.
Yeah.
But then he goes out in their bowl game and destroys Georgia Tech. Threw for a career-high 325 yards, had a really high quarterback rating, was 27 of 38, and he put it up 38 times. Like, that shows me that he can pass the football 30, 35, 40 times, and BYU is capable of being a very explosive offense with him.
Yeah. Look, I think Bear was impressive enough throughout the season last year to wet your beak, and that, again, is a big reason why I like BYU as a favorite of the Big 12, despite what Texas Tech has added and how much talent they have. Texas Tech should probably win the Big 12, but I feel like going into the season, it'd be hard not to recognize BYU and what they bring back, and Bear Bachmeier is a big reason for that. He's going to have to take a big step forward and make up for the lack of continuity and consistency, at the wide receiver position. Look, I look for his brother to have a big year this year. Tiger Bachmeier was kind of a complimentary piece at wide receiver last year. He's in a much bigger role this year, so I think he's a guy that could majorly step up in a big way. And then I really like the addition of Walker Lyons. I think this guy scratched the surface of his potential at USC at tight end. This is Ryder Lyons' older brother who's transferring in from USC and will be available this year. He's another guy that I'm expecting big things from in terms of guys that we don't know that could emerge as pass catchers.
Absolutely. I mean, when you look at Bears' best games last year were games in which the ground game opened up the passing game.
Yeah.
L.J. Martin in that running back kind of duo of Bear, who's very capable as a runner. Those were his best games passing the football. At Iowa State, when he threw for 307 and didn't have an interception and a couple of touchdowns in that 2-touchdown road win. At Colorado, when he had the game-winning drive and had a clean sheet, didn't throw any interceptions, and had a couple of touchdowns. And that should still be there with a better offensive line, with L.J. Martin returning. But at receiver, it's not bleak by any means. Like, Cody Hagan was only 16 months removed from his mission service when they kicked off their season, played a ton of snaps, and then got better as the year went along. And then the connection with his brother, you talk about chemistry, that's going to be there. JoJo Phillips is back, who they really like. He's 6'5", 210 pounds. His physical tools are NFL ready, and he's going to be on the field a ton. And then you factor in 2 elite tight ends, the passing game's going to be fine. I really think that they're going to be okay. It's can they get more explosive plays via the passing game, and that's where I look at Kyler Casper, the 6'6" transfer from Oregon, whose dad played in the NFL for 8 seasons. He played in 23 games at Oregon. Now, he dealt with some foot injuries the last 2 years that kept him off the field at times, but when he's out there, he's a matchup nightmare.
All right, let's hear from that coach. Kalani Sitake joins us as our road trip around the Big 12 continues. We're talking BYU football in our Modelo Spring Tour as the spring caravan rolls through Provo. Modelo Spring Football, earned, not given, because the full-time fan with Modelo knows no off-season. Along with James Westling, I'm Ari Tepke. Kalani Sitake is next. This is Big 12 Today on Big 12 Radio, presented by Modelo, heard on TuneIn, watched on Big 12 Studios.
Barber all with 2 fouls, and Cannon has 3 for the Cougars. Gibb gets the friendly roll, and after it sat on the rim for what felt like an eternity, she'll have a chance at a 3-point play.
First half, and she's going to get cooking. It's her senior game.
Played just 6 minutes, picked up those 2 early fouls as Delaney Gibb responds with a triple. Good shooting can be contagious. That's been the case for BYU. A really tough 26-11 spread in the third quarter. There's the story in the first matchup as well as BYU outscored ASU by 9 and Gibb scores at the horn.
Baseline, little floater, falls off. Another offensive rebound collected by BYU. Cycle to Gibb for 3. Hampson turning, double team comes. Benali from the seat of her pants finds Gibb, who scores it to beat the shot clock buzzer.
And Cannon cut off balance. Gergo's up strong. Massive finish. She's in double figures now with 10.
Gibb for 3. Ties! And a foul! Gonna shoot.
The blitzing the on ball has been so successful with his bigs getting out there.
Gibb for 3. Fouled again! And she does it again!
Twice in one game. And it's Benson again closing out. The same player closing out and undercutting Gibb. You have to allow the shooter to land. Benson fouled her as well on the other three-point make. And big time from Gibb.
Big 12 Radio, Big 12 Today, heard on TuneIn, watched on Big 12 Studios, and our spring preview series continues because there is no football offseason. Modelo fan rule number 31, there is no offseason, only research. And we've done a research to talk BYU football. Kalani Sitake, the head football coach of the BYU Cougars, is joining us now here on Big 12 Radio. And, let's start with the quarterback position because what a whirlwind these last 12 months have been for you at that position in particular. To think that Bear was able to do what he did, and at this time last year he was in Palo Alto, California. I mean, it's incredible for a true freshman to do that without even spending spring in Provo. How much more will he benefit from being on campus this spring?
Oh, yeah, I think it'll benefit him a lot more because the opportunity to just understand the entire playbook. I felt like we had to do that during fall camp, and then I had to do it throughout the season. And then, I give a lot of credit to A-Rod running the offense and being a quarterback coach. It's not an easy task, but I mean, if you watch our season, you kind of look how we went from game one and slowly progressed along the way and ended with the bowl game where I think that was like the crowning moment of, hey, he now understands the whole offense, but that was our last game of the year, so as we went along, it was good to see him progress, but most of the time you want to do that from January until August. And so now we'll be able to, fine tune it a little bit more and then look into a little bit more of the intricacies and details of everything. But I'm just really pleased and just, surprised a little bit, but more excited about his learning ability and his football IQ, the opportunity that he is to just shine on game day, and then his work ethic and his humility has been amazing. So now going into spring ball, we can see a lot of it in the last 2 months, just during the off season, how much progress he's made, and I'm really, really excited about his future.
Coach, can you elaborate on what you see from him in terms of those leadership characteristics off of the field?
Yeah, I think the part of being a great leader is also knowing when to follow and how to follow. I think he sets the example that way, and then his level of humility. I think everybody knows that he's the starting quarterback, and even when he was a true freshman and during the season last year, the way he dealt with the spotlight and the way he dealt with the praise. I think that's something that I don't know if you can teach that. That's something that you inherently have from within the way you were raised, and so I think it helps for him having brothers that have played, Division I, having an older brother that played actually quarterback and then was a starter. So learning from those lessons, and then the mentoring that he got from his coaching staff here, I think has been complementing his skills. And so when you put all that together and you put him in a team where guys are able to rally around a true freshman and make him feel like, he's actually earned his spot through competition, and then they're there to help complement and support him, I think only great things can happen. But I don't know if it would work if he weren't so humble. I think the fact that when he's still trying to learn as much as he can, that's something that was already within him before he got here. And so really appreciate how he was raised.
Yeah, I don't want to make this all about Bear because there's a lot I want to get to with you, but what did he learn? How much did he learn in that Big 12 championship game experience?
Yeah, I think the biggest issue is those mistakes, especially against great teams like Texas Tech, you can't make a lot of mistakes. I think you can get away with a few here and there, but those great teams, man, they capitalize on any mistakes that you can make, and it was a difficult but a great learning experience for the entire team, even for myself, and I think that helped us even going into the bowl game against Georgia Tech. I thought it was a great opportunity for us to learn. We're all about trying to get better, and so we have to be able to use those lessons and try to do things a little differently in 2026.
Well, you guys put together a loaded recruiting class. 24/7 Sports Composite gives your incoming transfer class top 15 nationally. So what were you looking to address in the portal, and tell us about your haul?
I think the most important part was to retain the guys that we wanted and the production that we have already within the team. And then the second part was bringing in young men, whether they're in high school. I mean, the majority of our high school signees are already enrolled and already in on campus, except for one that's joining us in June. And then we have a small group, another group that's going on their missions right out of high school, and they'll join us in 2 years. And then we had to, bring in some portal guys. I mean, that's not. I don't know if we'll ever make a huge living off of that, but we have to bring guys in that are a great fit, and maybe a lot of it was we didn't get them the first time, and but we knew about all these young men. None of them were really surprises to us. We had a relationship with them before, and knew about them before, and so the majority of them we wanted to make sure they're still a great fit to our program and our culture of our team. And then that means even playing time, so we have to be able to give them a chance to compete. Now, nothing's given here. You have to earn it. And so it was nice to have these guys join us that it seems like they're already part of our group, and it was an easy transition into our culture.
Obviously this doesn't, well, it does impact you and your team, but I want to get your thoughts on, your former boss, and I know a friend of yours, Cal Whittingham, taking the job at Michigan. I guess, how surprised were you? And with the whole situation that went down at Utah, it does impact BYU in losing your defensive coordinator, Jay Hill. So I guess the first part is, for your friend and a mentor, I'd imagine, going and taking the Michigan job, now not being the Utah head coach, and then the second part of that, taking your defensive coordinator with him.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's part of the coaching off season. Is you always wonder about who may leave your current staff and how you're going to replace them. So I already think those scenarios up in my mind. If this was to happen, who am I going to bring in and who I'm going to look at? And it played out exactly how I thought it would when losing Jay Hill. Obviously, he's a great friend of mine, so I don't like losing my buddies, but I understand why he made the move, and I wish him the best of luck. We're still friends. We still keep in contact, and he's gonna. I appreciate the things that he did for us here. I'm able to hang on him. He and Gennaro Guilford, our corners coach, went to Michigan, and I felt like we brought in some guys that are going to really gel with our group. They already have, and they fit right in line with what we do and what I do defensively. The corners coach, Lewis Walker, is a guy that I coached in college, and a guy that I helped mentor. So that's going to be easy. And then DeMario Warren, I've known him for a lot of pretty much his whole coaching career, and been connected to him. So these are guys that I already knew before, and I already kind of had a plan. I knew that they would be a great fit. And then Kelly Papinga taking over as coordinator. I knew that's what I wanted to do when Jay left. I just had to kind of do my due diligence and kind of check in with everybody and see what options that were out there. But that was my first initial thought from the beginning, anyways, and we moved pretty quickly on it. I think that was a big sign of how we were able to retain all our players, is because they saw the moves that we made, and they saw the people that we could bring in, and it made it easy for them to say no to a lot of different places, and we retained, everybody that we wanted, and that was a good thing. And then in regards to Kyle, Kyle's my guy, but maybe a surprise, because I think we all thought that he would stay at Utah, but I don't know all the details of the conversations that went on with him and administration at Utah and things like that. But I do know Morgan Scally's going to do a great job at Utah. He's a friend of mine. We worked together for a decade up there too. And so when I coordinated, he was my right hand guy. So he's going to do great there as a head coach, and and Kyle's going to do his thing in the Big Ten. And I understand the appeal of going to that conference and the draw, but I love this conference, and I love how we represent. I love the leadership in this conference, and I just honestly really love where BYU is in this conference and the connection that we have. And so that made it a lot easier for me to want to be here and remain here for the long run. And I'm settled. I'm ready to do this. This is my career. I'm gonna be here for the rest of my time.
Yeah, you reportedly said no to that conference.
Yeah, this is home, and BYU's home, and the Big 12's home for me.
Coach, I know that spring football after the portal, and it's a grind. What do you enjoy most about this time of year?
Man, it's football. It's like you go through this stretch where there's no football, and I get it. Basketball is exciting too because I love basketball. I mean, I was a basketball player 100 pounds ago too. So I get it. I love basketball, and but the competition, there's nothing like football, and so when it's just a little different now. Like I mentioned, the rosters are not as there's a roster limits now, and so I don't know if you could really go as big as you normally would. I don't know if any team could really do that in spring. And maybe it's a shift in type of practices because you have a veteran group that's here, and then you have a bunch of new guys that you want to see them prove themselves. And so how do you do that? You find different ways to maybe separate type of practices and things like that. And then you factor in sports science and all that. I mean, these guys aren't in great shape, so they're not in great football shape. It's like you look at a prize fighter; those guys aren't always in great shape to fight. So our season starts in August. This is just a time where we can actually do some sparring and do some things that we normally wouldn't do. And but the thing that I like most about it is that this gives us a chance as coaches to work with our group, especially with all the new coming players that are here on campus. Get used to our style of teaching, get used to our expectations on the field, and then this is kind of just like a preview of what we're going to see in fall camp.
Yeah, and I'm curious for kind of your approach. Every coach is different in terms of the psychological or the mental approach to spring. We were just talking, like you guys started early, February 27th, a lot earlier than many others, and you don't exactly have a spring game. You have more of an alumni game that at least gets fans out and gets people excited and amped up during spring for BYU football. So what is, just sort of lay down your approach to spring, and then in that, like, will you have do the competitions start in spring? Like, will you for wideout, there's a lot of open at wideout now with all the losses. So is that, a time for competition? Offensive line, you've got an opening at center, it appears. So is spring time for competition to start as well?
Yeah. I mean, our center returns. He's our All-American center. Bruce Mitchell returns.
Sorry, yeah, you're right.
But the other old line positions, we have a couple positions that we're going to be competing for. But on O-line, the receivers, we need to see who's going to be. I don't know if you can really earn a starting spot in spring. I think you have to. You kind of just let's just see who the main players are going to be that are going to compete for all those the extra time. But it is competition. It gets intense. It just has to be different. And then there's guys that we just need to see what they can do in a live scrimmage situation. It's not going to be a lot of the guys that you probably saw in the fall, but we need to see some of the newbies. We need to see what they can do on the field and see how they how they're able to take in the coaching that we give them and apply it to the field. And so I think there's going to be different types of practices for different. There's a veteran group and guys that we already know that can do it, but they all also need to work. And then there's a new group that you're like, okay, we think these guys can do it, but this is a chance to get them there. But we start spring early so that I think for a couple of things. Number one is if they do get they get banged up, gives us a little bit more time to get them ready for fall camp because it is a violent and intense game. And then it's also like kind of like that dead moment where things are everyone's kind of getting ready for March Madness and stuff like that. And so as they go through the tournament, we're kind of just sitting there playing some football along the way, So I think and then it goes into the time that we have off, the mandatory time that we have off for our guys, and then before you know it, we'll get back to summer conditioning, and then the season's right around the corner. So it's all part of the routine and the schedule. It's just a little different now because of the changes to the roster. I think that's the biggest issue is that we're limited with our roster size now, and that's everybody.
Well said. Kalani Sitake, BYU head football coach. Thanks so much, as always, for your time, Kalani. Be well, man. Thank you.
You guys are awesome. Appreciate it.
You're the
Thanks,
best.
Coach.
Kalani Sitake joining us in our spring football preview as we're talking BYU football here on Big 12 Radio. Big 12 Today, presented by Modelo. Heard on TuneIn, watched on Big 12 Studios.
Just kind of flung it up, no good. Murray draws the foul, hits the shot.
Gets the shoot out over the top. You've got to be able to match up in transition and stop the ball. If not, they're going
and hit that little mid-range jumper.
Speaking of which, A.J. DeBonsa playing after this game against UCF. That's a great drive right there by Braden Burries on Tunde Yesufu.
Isaac Williams, when he's been out there, he's been the best player on the floor. Burries 3. That one's good.
And they needed that.
Burries going hard downhill all the way with the left hand.
How quick are they? I mean, it's funny. Some teams can.
Prospects in this game. Karchenkov hustles and gets the rebound and finds Burries!
Oh, my goodness.
Oh! What a dunk from the freshman guard.
Very talented freshman got space and put him on a poster. But this
Baylor needs a stop. Burries pulls up. Burries jumper. Got it! Burries huge! And that's a 2. So the lead is 4 with 27.8.
He's done it once again here tonight in Waco.
A couple of point-blank looks, and Kansas could not convert. Burries.
7 different Wildcats have led this team in scoring this year.
Burries from the corner and buries it.
Big 12 Radio. It's Big 12 today. Big 12 Conference Wrestling is back at the BOK Center in Tulsa, Oklahoma. The 2026 Big 12 Wrestling Championships presented by Allstate returns Friday, March 6th and Saturday, March 7th. That's this weekend. In the heart of downtown Tulsa, the best wrestlers in the country battle for individual titles, the Big 12 Championship, and seeding in the NCAA Championships. Tickets and premium hospitality are available now at bokcenter.com/events. Big 12 Wrestling at the BOK Center in Tulsa, March 6th and 7th, along with James Westling. I am Ari Temkin. It's Big 12 today on Big 12 Radio. We are presented by Modelo, an hour and change away from things getting kicked off in Kansas City for the 2026 Phillips 66 Big 12 Women's Championship. And I'm most anxious, James, to see Kansas State and Cincinnati tip it off on that ASB glass floor.
Man, it was exactly almost to the day 1 year ago that we had an epic first-round game on the Louis Vuitton floor. This one's going to look very different. I cannot wait to see what the actual court design is going to be on the ASB glass floor because they can switch that thing right before tip-off. We could have a different court during warm-ups opposed to tip-off. They can do so many cool things with it, and the bracket looks great. The updated men's basketball Big 12 tournament bracket looks very different than it did just 24 hours ago, with Iowa State sliding to the 5 seed, Cincinnati climbing to the 7 seed, and how about this? BYU has fallen to the 10 seed in the Big 12 tournament on the men's side, and would play Kansas. They would play Kansas State in the first round, and then they would have a potential second-round game against a well-rested Cincinnati team, who things did not go well for BYU last night in Cincy.
Yeah, well said. Speaking of, BYU is sliding, but they did end up getting one of the top recruits in the nation, the 5-star small forward Bruce Branch III, communicated last night that he has reclassified to the 2026 class, and he will be joining BYU next year. So Kevin Young continues to rake. Obviously, this team losing Richie Saunders has really derailed their opportunity to be one of the top 5 or 6 best teams in this conference. But Bruce Branch, Kevin Young continues to recruit at a high level.
Yeah, it's insane. BYU has the resources. We know that they're paying A.J. DiBonsa a boatload. And even with all the injuries they've had this year, like I would say that the value that they've gotten, the return on investment for A.J. DiBonsa has smashed it out of the park. Even though, wins and losses wise, it hasn't gone as planned. But they've been decimated by injuries, things completely out of their control. And because of the growth and development of DiBonsa, who's now projected to be the number 1 pick. Like, I'm seeing all these NBA mock drafts with Peterson sliding to 2. I've seen him sliding to 3 and a couple others with what Boozer's doing at Duke. DiBonsa is going to be the number 1 guy. And I think Bruce Branch III sees that, says, hey, he's a similar player too, 6'7", about 190 pounds, has a 7'2" wingspan. He's a freak. That's a huge get.
Yeah, and DiBonsa may not actually be the number 1 overall pick, James, because take a listen to what he said.
But do you care about going number 1? Do you want to go number 1?
Yeah.
Do you think you will?
Well, I might not leave.
What do you mean?
Like, I might not leave college.
Why not?
I just got to return to the season.
So you haven't made up your mind that you're going to go into the draft?
Nah, cause my mom wants me to graduate.
Really?
Yeah, so I might not leave. But I might leave. I don't know. The fans might get into my head, talk about, 1 more year, maybe 3 more years. I don't know. But I'm going to have to talk to my mom. So
your mom wants you to stay and get your degree.
She wants me to get my degree.
Yeah. Why does she think it's important that you get your degree?
Because, as mom, she's thinking, like, post-basketball and, God forbid if anything happens to me, I should always have a backup plan.
I think people would be shocked to hear that, though, because everybody's assuming you're going into the draft after this season.
I mean, yeah, they can assume. I ain't nice, but I didn't say anything.
All right. I will still assume that AJ is going to be entering the NBA draft. That audio, by the way, via the Deseret Voices podcast. So great audio there with AJ DiBonsa talking about how he may not leave. I'd put that at a less than 1% chance. Here's the deal. AJ can leave and will and still graduate. So,
right.
And how? Well, you take classes and you graduate sometime later. But I can't imagine any sane person would tell AJ to stay at school when you can leave school, go to the NBA, be the 1st or 2nd overall pick, and still get your degree.
Yeah, especially when those NBA powers come calling. And then you look at Yegor Dimon, who is the one and done at BYU last year, and all the success that he's having as a rookie. Like, Yegor Dimon is having one of the best rookie campaigns in the NBA this season. He's averaging double figures, and I think a lot of that is because Kevin Young runs his program like an NBA franchise, and so these guys are so ready. With that said, if he comes back to BYU, I mean, you can't improve from being number 1. You can't go from number 1 to number 1, which is probably what the case would be. But in terms of another year at BYU being similar to your rookie year in the NBA, I could see why BYU fans would make the case and why Kevin Young might pull him into his office and say, hey, we can get you even more prepared for the NBA if you come back 1 more year. But I think Dad's going to have something to say about that. Dad is very much having his sights set on the NBA. Mom wants the degree. Dad wants the NBA superstardom. His dad is courtside for every game, whether it's home, away, does not matter. He's right there in the thick of it. And they're a great family, and A.J. DiBonsa's an incredibly intelligent, smart kid who just crushes it in the classroom, too. He checks all the boxes. But if he comes back and you put him with Branch, my goodness, BYU could hit a whole nother level.
Yeah, well said. Again, I'd put it at less than 1%. Maybe that's a little bit too high. A huge night of basketball last night in the Big 12. TCU gets a huge win over Texas Tech. TCU now should be firmly in the field. And this is a team that you may want to pick in your bracket to make a deep run, despite being maybe a 10 seed or perhaps higher now that they can just continue to win. But here's what Grant McCaslin said about his team and having some tough losses after really big wins.
The pattern's not sure, because of the nature of how it's starting out, yes. I do think that when you play a really physical team, it does take a lot out of us because we have skill. And if you were to characterize our players, you wouldn't say that we're a physically imposing team, even though we have physical talent. We have great scoring and shooting in the perimeter and the guard spots. I mean, we're not huge physically around the basket. Lawan Watts and Luke, I mean, those guys are Lawan's skilled more so, and Lawan and Luke's a vertical athlete, and I think what we have is a good combination of basketball players, but I wouldn't call us physical. We have to really ramp that up, and I do think you can see it takes it out of us when we play a really physical team, and then you got to turn around and play in a short amount of time. So am I concerned about it? Yes, but I'm not concerned about necessarily just the physical play. It's the fight that we got to have in order to be successful. And I did think that we had the depth because I loved it. I mean, you can throw Tyree in there, and we can maybe throw some of those forwards in there and the way we wanted to play, but then you start to get down offensively and you're trying to find that mix of who you want to keep putting out there. And I got to do a better job making sure that we can maintain a physicality and still put pressure on other teams in the way we play offense. And maybe we're going to have to choose one or the other at some point just to try to separate. But yeah, it's definitely concerning. And it's a part of this game that we've got to get a grip on before we get into these games that are elimination games.
How about that, James? I mean, Grant calling out the physicality of his team right there, basically saying like we've got to really pay attention to how physical we're being because we're not a physical team.
Yeah, and he noted that they're a vertical, almost for lack of a better term, finesse-style team, which I think is the case when you watch Texas Tech. They're not real big in terms of their weight class. They have length, but they have a lot of thin tweener-type players. And the team that they just played that was extremely physical was Cincinnati. So on these quick turnarounds in the postseason, matchups are going to be critical for Texas Tech. Like, you don't want to play a Cincinnati or a TCU or somebody that's super physical, or outside the Big 12 in the NCAA tournament, like you wouldn't want to see a St. John's in the second round or a Tennessee or somebody that maybe they're not a great shooting team, but they're just super physical because they can wear on you. And then even if you get past that game on the short turnaround, it can spell trouble when you've lost your legs in the next round. So Grant's just so, like we talk about self-awareness, that guy is so aware of the team that he has, putting them in the best situation. And we can see it, and it's kind of eye-opening to hear a coach almost admit, like, yeah, we're a shooting, finesse-style team. We play good defense, but we're just not a real big physical team that can dominate you on the front line.
There were some really important results in last night's games, especially on the bubble. TCU putting itself on the right side of the bubble. But how about West Virginia on the wrong side of the bubble now? This was a team that, it felt like was closing in on an opportunity to be in the tournament. They're now 62nd in the net. They're 5-7 against quad 1, 2-5 against quad 2, and 2-1 against quad 3, which may not be good enough. Here's what Ross Hodge said after their quad 3 loss to Kansas State.
Give Coach Driscoll and his group a lot of credit, man. It's no secret they've had their fair share of adversity this season. Just a myriad of things that have happened, and injuries and coaching change, and for them to still hang in there and still fight this thing all the way out, I think is to be commended. On our end, felt like we had some opportunities early in the first half, and felt like we probably should have had an opportunity to be up a little more than just 3 in the first half, when they were kind of trying to find their footing, and we just couldn't make the plays necessary. And then you give a team like that some hope and some life, and they still have some talented players, and the sense of urgency and desire to win the game, I felt like shifted to them early in that second half, and they made all the hustle plays, and they made all the physical plays, and that resulted in what got us in the hole that we were in.
So a pretty tough loss. It's year 1 for Ross Hodge, so I'm sure he'll be fine, obviously, and I think this is an impressive season, but it looks like West Virginia's going to be on the wrong side of the bubble here after this loss.
Oh, totally agree. Yeah, this was the dagger for West Virginia. They I think with the type of kids he has, they will elect to play in a postseason, whether it's the NIT or that postseason tournament out in Vegas. They should get some home games if they elect to play in one of those. But there was a catastrophic 21-0 run by Kansas State in the first half when they dominated the glass. Kamari McGriff just took over. He didn't play in the first meeting between these two teams when it was close in Morgantown. And I think when it comes to West Virginia, like, this is a first-year coach who I believe has exceeded expectations from what he had coming into the season. He had to entirely rebuild a roster and a program that's had 4 different coaches in 4 years.
Yeah.
So I can't wait to see what he does next year. He has some tremendous athletes and some really good pieces. They just don't have enough depth.
Yeah, I agree. Well said. Anything else stand out to you about the games last night? I mean, obviously Kansas and Arizona State has taken up a lot of our time today. TCU getting that big one over Texas Tech. West Virginia's lost to K-State. What else?
Yeah, I would lean into Oklahoma State winning on the road in Orlando. That's a long road trip, and not a lot of people win in Orlando. I think that, again, says a lot about a rising program in Oklahoma State who's probably a year away. Like, we thought they could be a tournament team this year. Anthony Roy missed a good chunk of the season, but he's really surged here down the stretch. I was quite surprised by Oklahoma State's effort. And this time of year, when you get players that are giving it that type of effort for their coach, it tells me that they like him. And Steve Lutz is going to get that team going. And then, man, Cincy, the way they clubbed BYU, like, how do you beat a team that's been in the top 25 all year long, 90-68, and the NCAA Tournament Selection Committee, you can't overlook that. They are on a heater right now.
Yeah, well said. Cincinnati could very well be the 9th team, which has seemed improbable just a couple of months ago, but this team has really turned it on and has some elite victories. So we'll see if they could close out the season with a win against TCU, which would really help to solidify Cincinnati's positioning, especially after TCU seems like they've been solidified in the field. We shall see. All right, plenty to come on tomorrow's show, including our Spring Caravan Tour stop in Utah. So we're going down from the top of the standings, down to the bottom, with Utah finishing 3rd in the Big 12. With their new head coach, they will join us. We'll hear from them and talk spring football on tomorrow's show. Plus, we'll recap Baylor, Houston, and day 1 from today's Big 12 Women's Championship in Kansas City with BYU, Kansas, and Arizona State, all looking to hold on by the hair of their chinny chin chin in the bubble. All right, thanks to Anthony Smith, our producer with Big 12 Studios. Thanks to Taman Turner T. Chains, our producer with TuneIn. Thanks to James Westling. I'm Ari Tebkin. Big 12 Today is back tomorrow. We're presented by Modelo, but for now we're out. Peace.
With Stacy Snead behind.